Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash's prize for winning the Pokémon Grand Prix was a harem of all regional coordinators. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The weight of victory. The air inside the Indigo Plateau's Grand Colosseum didn't taste like air anymore. It tasted like ozone, crushed rock, and the metallic tang of adrenaline that had been cycling through 80,000 people for the last 3 hours. Ash Ketchum stood on the cracked earth of the battlefield, his chest heaving. Sweat plastered his black hair to his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he didn't blink. He couldn't. Across the decimated field, a cratered ruin that had once been a grass terrain. The dust was finally settling around the massive, unconscious form of a Metagross. Metagross is unable to battle, the referee roared, his voice cracking under the strain of the microphone. The winner of the Grand Prix, and the new bearer of the Covenant, is Ash Ketchum. The silence that had held the stadium hostage shattered. It wasn't just a cheer, it was a physical wall of sound that slammed into Ash, vibrating through the soles of his boots. He looked down at Pikachu, who was panting heavily by his ankle, yellow fur matted with dust and static. "We did it, buddy," Ash whispered, his voice rough. He dropped to one knee, scooping the electric mouse onto his shoulder. Pikachu nuzzled against his neck, too exhausted to do more than offer a weak, victorious, Pika. Ash stood up, rolling his shoulders. He was 19 now, and the years on the road had stripped away the softness of his youth. He was taller, his jawline sharper, his frame filled out with the lean, corded muscle of someone who didn't just command Pokémon but trained alongside them. He wore a modified version of his old gear. A high-collared vest reinforced with lightweight composite plating, practical cargo trousers, and gloves that had seen better days. He raised a fist to the crowd. The noise intensified, a deafening roar of approval. But as Ash looked up at the VIP box, protected by thick bulletproof glass, he didn't feel the elation he expected. He felt a strange, cold knot of intuition tightening in his gut. His aura, usually a dormant hum beneath his skin, was prickling. Ash Ketchum. The announcer's voice boomed over the PA system, drowning out the crowd. "Please proceed to the central dais for the rite of stewardship." Ash frowned. Stewardship? The pamphlet had listed the prize as a massive credit sum and a regional honor. He assumed it was a trophy or a sponsorship deal. He walked toward the center of the arena, stepping over a fissure in the ground caused by the last Giga impact. A platform rose from the center of the field. Standing on it was High Counselor Yorin, an elderly man in ceremonial robes that looked heavy enough to suffocate in. Flanking him were 4 guards, and behind him stood 3 silhouettes cloaked in shimmering, opaque veils. Ash stepped onto the platform. The crowd quieted down, a hushed anticipation rippling through the stands. "Ash Ketchum from Pallet Town," Yorin announced, his voice amplified to godlike proportions. "You have bested the champions of 4 nations. You have proven your strength, your tactical brilliance, and your unbreakable spirit. Today, the Grand Prix honors the ancient pact." Yorin turned to the cloaked figures. In the eras before the leagues, peace was kept not by treaties, but by blood and bond. The regions offered their finest muses to the strongest warrior, creating a living bridge between the lands. Today, we revive the covenant. Ash's brow furrowed. "Wait," he said, his voice low but projecting. "What are you talking about?" Yorin ignored him. He gestured to the first figure. "Behold the muse of Hoenn." The veil was pulled away. Ash froze. The crowd gasped. Standing there, dressed in an elaborate, flowing gown of deep sapphire silk that looked more like a royal court dress than anything practical, was May. She looked terrified, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, her eyes darting around the stadium like a trapped bird. When her eyes locked onto Ash, shock registered on her face, followed immediately by a flush of humiliation. "May," Ash breathed. "Behold the muse of Sinnoh," Yorin continued. The second veil fell. Dawn stood revealed in a gown of platinum and white, her hair styled in an intricate, traditional updo that made her look older, colder. She wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking at the floor, her jaw set tight, trembling slightly. And the muse of Kalos. The third veil dropped. Serena. She wore crimson and gold, a dress that highlighted a maturity Ash hadn't realized she'd gained. Unlike the others, she was looking straight at Ash. Her eyes were wide, shimmering with a cocktail of emotions he couldn't parse: relief, horror, longing, and confusion. By the laws of the Grand Prix, Yoren bellowed, raising his arms, these 3 regional coordinators are hereby bound to the Grand Steward. They're your prize, Ash Ketchum. Your counselors, your diplomats, and your charge. Their loyalty is yours by law. The stadium erupted in applause, but Ash felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Prize? Ash snapped, stepping forward. The microphone on the podium caught his voice. They aren't trophies. Yoren leaned in, the jovial mask slipping for a fraction of a second. Smile, boy, he hissed, away from the mic. This is politics. You hold the leash to 3 regions now. Don't embarrass them by rejecting it. Ash looked at May, who looked ready to punch someone or cry. He looked at Dawn, who was pale as a sheet. He looked at Serena, who was watching him with a desperate intensity. This wasn't a victory. It was a cage. Before Ash could open his mouth to tear the High Counselor apart verbally, the intuition in his gut flared into a screaming siren. The skylight of the dome above them shattered. It wasn't a random break. It was a coordinated breach. 6 massive, black metal shapes plummeted from the ceiling, trailing smoke. They slammed into the arena floor with the force of meteors, sending a shockwave of dust and debris blasting over the dais. The crowd's cheers turned to screams. Security! Yoren shrieked, stumbling back. The dust cleared, revealing the intruders. They were mechs, hulking, bipedal machines painted a matte, light-absorbing black. No insignia. No faces. Just a single, glowing red eye in the center of their armored chests. The Obsidian Trust. Ash didn't know the name yet, but he knew the intent. The mechs raised their arms, revealing rotating Gatling cannons. They weren't aiming at the crowd, they were aiming at the girls. Down, Ash roared. He didn't run away, he didn't call for a Pokémon, he moved. Ash launched himself across the dais, tackling May and Dawn just as the air filled with the deafening brrrrt of high-velocity rounds. He drove them into the hard floor behind the heavy stone podium, covering their bodies with his own. Bullets chewed into the stone inches from his head, sending razor-sharp shrapnel slicing across his cheek. Serena! Ash yelled over the gunfire. Serena had dropped to a crouch behind a decorative pillar, her face pale. Pikachu, Iron Tail on the floor. Create a trench, Ash commanded. Pikachu, who had been clinging to Ash's shoulder, leapt. The mouse's tail turned to metallic steel, glowing white, and he slammed it into the dais. The structure, already weakened by the impact, cracked open, creating a divot of cover. Get in! Ash shoved May and Dawn into the depression. Stay down. Ash, what is happening? Dawn screamed, her voice high with panic. They're shooting at us. They're trying to kill you, Ash said grimly. He peeked over the rim of the stone. The 6 mechs were advancing, their heavy footsteps shaking the platform. The stadium security, men with Machamps and Arcanines, were rushing the field, but the mechs simply backhanded the Pokémon with hydraulic limbs, sending 1,000-pound creatures flying like ragdolls. Anti-Pokémon armor, Ash muttered. Composite plating, kinetic dampeners. He reached for his belt. He had 5 balls left. His team was battered from the tournament, but they weren't out. Lucario. Charizard. He threw the balls high. In 2 flashes of blue light, his heavy hitters materialized. Charizard roared, a sound that shook the glass of the VIP boxes, flames dripping from his maw. Lucario landed in a crouch, his aura spikes already flared, sensing the killing intent radiating from the machines. Charizard, flamethrower on the vents. Melt their sensors. Lucario, Bone Rush. Take out the knee joints. Ash didn't wait to see if they obeyed. He sprinted from cover, drawing the fire of the lead mech. Ash, no! Serena cried out from her hiding spot. The lead mech tracked him. The Gatling gun spun. Ash slid on his knees, his body moving faster than a human should. A blue glow encased his limbs. Aura. He wasn't just commanding, he was reinforcing his own physical limits. He pushed off the ground, dodging a spray of bullets that tore up the concrete where he had been a microsecond before. Charizard unleashed a torrent of white-hot fire. The flames engulfed the second mech, melting the sensors on its head. It flailed blindly, firing into the air. Lucario was a blur of motion. He wove through the legs of the third mech, forming a glowing staff of pure energy. He slammed the bone rush into the hydraulic piston behind the mech's knee. Metal screeched, oil sprayed, and the machine toppled, crashing loudly onto the stage. Ash reached Serena's pillar. He grabbed her arm, hauling her up. "Move, into the trench with the others." "My dress." Serena stumbled, the heavy fabric catching on the rubble. "Forget the dress." Ash grabbed the silk at her knee and ripped it upward, tearing the heavy skirt away to free her legs. He shoved her toward the hole where May and Dawn were huddled. "Target acquired." A synthesized voice boomed from the lead mech. "The muses must be purged." The lead mech ignored Charizard and leveled a shoulder-mounted cannon at the hole. It began to charge. A glowing ball of plasma formed in the barrel. Ash saw it. He saw the trajectory. It would vaporize the podium and everyone behind it. Charizard is too far, Ash realized. Lucario is engaged. He was the only thing in the way. Ash planted his feet. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a fraction of a second. When he opened them, they were glowing a luminous, terrifying blue. Greninja. He didn't have Greninja's ball. Greninja was miles away, ostensibly released years ago. But the bond, the covenant between them, had never actually broken. It stretched across space, a tether of pure soul. A watery vortex exploded into existence in front of Ash. From the swirling torrent, the ninja Pokémon emerged, water shurikens already forming in his hands, but he didn't throw them. Ash threw his hands forward. Greninja mimicked the motion. Hydro pump. Max output. A pressurized beam of water, thick as a tree trunk, blasted from Greninja's palms. It collided with the plasma shot just as it fired. Boom. The explosion was blinding. Steam and energy shockwaves rippled outward, knocking Ash backward. He hit the ground hard, rolling to a stop at the edge of the trench. His ears were ringing. His vision swam. Ash, hands were on him. Soft hands. May was shaking his shoulder. Dawn was staring at the scorch mark on his vest where a piece of shrapnel had embedded itself in the composite plate, inches from his heart. "Are you alive?" May yelled, her face streaked with dust. Ash groaned, sitting up. The lead mech was smoking, its cannon destroyed by the collision, but 3 more were still operational and advancing. The stadium panic had turned into a stampede. The exits were jammed. "We have to go," Ash coughed, spitting out grit. He looked at the 3 girls. They were terrified civilians in ball gowns. He was the Grand Steward. He was their shield. "Can you run?" he asked, looking at them. Serena nodded, ripping the remnants of her heels off and standing barefoot on the concrete. "Yes." "May? Dawn? Just get us out of here," May snapped, though her hand was gripping Ash's arm so tight her knuckles were white. Ash tapped his headset. "Charizard, air evac, now." Charizard, currently wrestling a mech, slammed the machine's head into the ground and launched himself into the air. He landed heavily beside the trench, his tail flame blazing like a beacon. "Get on," Ash ordered. "All of us?" Dawn asked, looking at the dragon. "He can take the weight." "Go." Ash lifted Dawn by the waist and practically threw her onto Charizard's back. May scrambled up behind her. Serena hesitated, looking at Ash. "You're coming too," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm right behind you," Ash lied. "Lucario and I need to clear the sky." "Ash. Go." Ash slapped Charizard's flank. "Fly low, head for the Viridian forest border. I'll find you." Charizard roared, a sound of protest, but the bond held. He trusted Ash. With a powerful beat of his wings, the dragon launched into the air, carrying the 3 coordinators away from the slaughter. Ash turned back to the chaos. 3 mechs left. Lucario was panting, holding his left arm. It looked dislocated. Greninja was crouched, alert but fading. The teleportation had drained him. Ash drew a fresh Pokeball. "Sceptile," he murmured. "Let's cut them down to size." He released the grass type. Sceptile emerged, the twig in his mouth shifting as he grinned. "Cover escape," Ash commanded, his voice turning cold, bereft of the warmth he showed the girls. He stepped forward, his aura flaring again, intimidating the very machines facing him. Nobody follows them. Nobody leaves this ring standing. The remaining mechs reassessed their threat priority. The muses were gone. The steward was the new primary target. Ash cracked his knuckles. Come and get it. The escape from the stadium was a blur of violence and smoke. Ash didn't remember much of the specifics. He remembered Sceptile slicing the hydraulics of a mech with leaf blade. He remembered Lucario forcing his dislocated shoulder back into place with a sickening pop and then blasting a mech's head off with an aura sphere. He remembered the smell of burning metal and the screams of the crowd. 30 minutes later, he was stumbling through the dense underbrush of the foothills outside the plateau. The sun had set, leaving the world in a bruised purple twilight. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. His ribs felt bruised, possibly cracked, but he was moving. He reached the rendezvous point, an old ranger station near the tree line. Charizard was there, curled protectively around a small fire. The three girls were sitting on a rotting log. They looked like wrecks. Their expensive gowns were torn and dirt-stained. May was pacing. Dawn was shivering. Serena was staring into the fire. When Ash broke through the bushes, Sceptile and Lucario flanking him, the girls jumped. Ash. Serena was the first one up. She ran to him, stopping just short of hugging him, her hands hovering over his battered chest. You look terrible." "I'm fine," Ash lied, leaning heavily against a tree. He recalled Sceptile and Lucario, murmuring thanks to the balls. He kept Pikachu on his shoulder. "Is everyone okay? Hurt?" "We're fine," Dawn said, her voice trembling. "Ash. Who were they? Why did they call us muses?" Ash slid down the tree trunk until he was sitting on the mossy ground. He winced as his ribs protested. "I don't know the attackers. But the muse thing. That's the prize." May stopped pacing. She marched over to him, her blue eyes blazing with fury. "The prize? Is that what we are to you? Cattle? You won a contest, so now you own us?" Ash looked up at her. He was too tired to be diplomatic. "I didn't write the rules, May. I thought I was winning a trophy and a sponsorship check. I didn't know you guys were part of the deal." "So reject it," May shouted, her voice cracking. "Tell them no." "I tried," Ash said quietly. Then the robots dropped. He looked at the fire. "Listen. That guy, Yorin? He said this was an old law. A covenant. That implies magic, or at least binding politics. If I just say, no, and walk away, I don't know what happens to you. Maybe you lose your citizenship. Maybe you get arrested. Maybe those robots come back and finish the job because you're no longer protected." Silence fell over the camp. The reality of their situation was sinking in. They were fugitives. "The Obsidian Trust," Dawn whispered. Ash looked at her. "You know the name?" "I saw it on the hull of the mechs," Dawn said, hugging her arms. "My mother. She mentioned them once. They're extremists. They believe Pokémon are dangerous variables that stop human evolution. They hate the leagues. They hate the mysticism of the old world. And we represent the old world," Serena realized softly. "The muses. The steward. We're symbols." "Great," May kicked a stone. "So we're walking targets." "No," Ash said. He forced himself to stand up, though his legs screamed in protest. He walked over to the fire, the light casting long shadows across his determined face. "You're not targets," Ash said firmly. He looked at each of them in turn. "And you're not prizes. I don't care what that council guy said. I don't own you." He held out his hand. "But right now, we are being hunted. I have a team that can fight, and I have the survival skills to keep us off the grid. You guys know the regions better than anyone. The politics, the geography, the hidden paths." He looked at May. "I need your fire." He looked at Dawn. "I need your brain." He looked at Serena. "I need your heart." "We stick together," Ash said. "Not because of a contract, but because if we separate, we die. We figure this out, we find out who wants us dead, and we stop them, together." May stared at him for a long moment. She looked at his outstretched hand, stained with soot and blood. She looked at his eyes, honest, fierce, and completely devoid of the arrogance she had feared. Slowly, she reached out and gripped his hand. "Fine," she muttered. "But if you try to order me around like a Pokémon, I'll have Blaziken kick you into orbit." Ash grinned, a tired, crooked smile. "Deal." Dawn placed her hand on top of theirs. "I want to go home," she whispered. "But I trust you, Ash." Serena didn't hesitate. She placed her hand on the pile, her fingers lacing slightly with ashes. "I'm with you, always." The wind howled through the trees, carrying the distant sound of sirens from the stadium. The world had changed in the span of 3 hours. They were no longer just trainers and coordinators. They were a unit. A target. Ash squeezed their hands, his aura pulsing warmly, enveloping them in a subtle, invisible shield. "Get some sleep," Ash said, breaking the circle. "I'll take the first watch." He walked to the edge of the clearing, turning his back to the fire to face the dark forest. He reached for the brim of his hat, pulling it low. His hand drifted to the Pokeball on his belt where Greninja rested. The game was over. The war had begun. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. Echoes of the old world. The rain in the borderlands didn't fall. It hammered. It was a cold, relentless deluge that turned the forest floor into a sludge of pine needles and mud, stripping the heat from anyone foolish enough to be caught in it. Ash Ketchum didn't feel the cold. He was too busy feeling the radius of the forest around them. He walked at the front of the column, a machete in his right hand, borrowed from the ranger station's emergency kit, hacking through the dense undergrowth. His aura was a low hum in the back of his skull, a radar sweeping for electronic signatures or the hostile intent of living things. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of a noctowl, registered in his mind as a threat assessment. Behind him, the mood was less focused and more desperate. "My boots are ruined," May muttered, her voice tight with misery. She was trudging through the mud in borrowed ranger boots that were 2 sizes too big, the hem of her sapphire gown tied up around her waist with a piece of rope Ash had found. "This is insane. We're walking through a monsoon." "Keep your voice down," Ash said, not looking back. He sliced through a thicket of vines. "Sound carries." "Let it carry," May snapped, stopping in her tracks. She wiped wet hair out of her eyes. "We've been walking for 6 hours, Ash. We're exhausted. Our Pokémon are exhausted. We can't keep this pace." Ash stopped. He didn't turn immediately. He took a breath, listening. The rain masked the sound of their movement, but it also masked the approach of pursuers. He turned around. May looked ready to collapse or fight, her eyes red-rimmed. Dawn was leaning against a tree, hugging herself, her platinum dress now a shade of dirty gray. Serena was beside her, rubbing Dawn's back, but she looked pale and shaky. Ash realized he had been driving them like soldiers. They weren't soldiers. "You're right," Ash said, his voice softening. He sheathed the machete. "There's a ridge about half a mile up. Rocky overhang. We'll be dry there. Can you make it?" May glared at him, then sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Half a mile. That's it." "That's it," Ash promised. He moved to the back of the line, falling in step beside Serena to ensure no one lagged behind. "Here," he said, unclipping a canteen from his belt. "Drink. Small sips." Serena took it, her fingers brushing his. Her hand was freezing. "Ash, you haven't eaten or drank anything since the stadium." "I'm fine," he said automatically. "Stop saying that," Serena whispered, taking a sip and passing it to Dawn. "You're bleeding through your shirt." Ash glanced down. The composite plating of his vest was cracked, and the cut from the shrapnel had reopened during the hike. A dark stain was spreading on the black fabric of his undershirt. "It looks worse than it is," he murmured. "Keep moving, eyes forward." The ridge offered a reprieve from the rain, but little comfort. It was a shallow cave, dry enough to start a smokeless fire using dry wood Ash dug out from the deeper crevices. The girls huddled around the small flame, stripping off their soaked outer layers to dry. Ash stayed near the mouth of the cave, facing the dark, rain-swept forest. He had Pikachu patrolling the perimeter and had released his Lucario to meditate and recover energy. Ash sat cross-legged, cleaning his machete with a rag. He watched the girls out of the corner of his eye. They were whispering, casting glances at him. The dynamic had shifted. In the stadium, he had been a savior. Now, in the cold light of reality, he was their jailer, or at least, the personification of the situation that trapped them. He reached into his pack and pulled out 3 protein bars, standard-issue Ranger rations. Dry, tasteless, but calorie-dense. He tossed one to each of them. "Dinner," he said. May looked at the bar wrapper like it was an insult. "Energy bars. Fantastic. Do you have any actual food?" "I have a jagged rock you can chew on if you prefer," Ash deadpanned. Dawn let out a short, startled laugh that turned into a cough. May rolled her eyes, but ripped the wrapper open. "So," Dawn said, taking a bite and grimacing. What is the plan, Ash? We can't live in the woods forever. The Trust. If they have resources like those mechs, they have satellites, facial recognition. We're heading for Mount Silver, Ash said. The three girls stared at him. Mount Silver? Serena asked. That's across the continent, and it's a restricted zone. The wild Pokémon there are. Level 80 or higher, Ash finished. Exactly. The Trust relies on tech. Mechs, drones, tracking algorithms. High-level wild Pokémon disrupt electronic signals with their sheer energy output. It's a dead zone for surveillance. Plus, I have a contact there. Who? May asked. Someone who hates politics as much as I do, Ash said vaguely. He didn't mention that his contact was Red, the elusive Kanto champion who hadn't been seen in public for 3 years. And what makes you the expert? May challenged, though the bite was leaving her tone, replaced by curiosity. You're a battler, Ash. You hit things until they faint. This is espionage. Survival. Ash looked at her. The firelight cast deep shadows over his face, making him look older than 19. I haven't just been battling for the last few years, May, Ash said quietly. I've been involved in incidents in almost every region. Team Rocket, Magma, Aqua, Galactic, Flare, Plasma. I've seen organizations rise and fall. I've learned how they think. He gestured to the dark woods. The Obsidian Trust isn't like the others. They don't want to rule the world or reset it. They want to sterilize it. They view the bond between human and Pokémon as a biological weakness. That makes them predictable, but it also means they won't stop. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I won't let them touch you. That is the covenant. You might hate the title, and I don't blame you. But as long as I breathe, you are under my protection. The silence that followed was heavy. May looked away, chewing her lip. Serena watched Ash with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Suddenly, Ash's head snapped up. Lucario, resting in the corner, opened his eyes instantly. His aura spikes flared blue. Ash, Dawn whispered, sensing the shift. Ash stood up, stomping out the fire with his boot in one fluid motion. The cave plunged into darkness. They're here, Ash whispered. Get your Pokémon ready. How? May hissed. We didn't hear anything. Not mechs, Ash said, drawing a Pokéball. Heartbeats. Fast ones. Too fast for nature. From the darkness of the tree line, a pair of eyes glowed. Then another. Then 10 more. They weren't the warm amber of wild Pokémon. They were a synthetic, neon crimson. A low, mechanical growl vibrated through the air. Ash stepped out into the rain. Houndoom. But they weren't normal Houndoom. As the creatures slinked into the moonlight, the horror became clear. They were organic, but heavily modified. Metal plating replaced their ribcages. Their tails were tipped with serrated blades. And where their mouths should have been, metallic muzzles hissed with venting steam. Gene-spliced trackers, Ash thought. Project Chimera. There were 12 of them. A hunting pack. Don't let them surround us, Ash barked. Back to back, circle formation. The girls scrambled out of the cave, releasing their partners. Blaziken, take the stage, May shouted. Mamoswine, let's go. Dawn cried. Delphox, come out, Serena commanded. The Pokémon materialized, sensing the danger immediately. Blaziken kicked up a spray of mud, wrists blazing. Mamoswine stomped the ground. Delphox drew her stick like a wand. The Houndoom pack didn't hesitate, they didn't bark, they just launched. Flamethrower. Ash ordered Charizard, who materialized from his ball with a roar. Charizard unleashed a stream of fire, but the lead Houndoom didn't dodge. It opened its mechanical maw and inhaled the fire. The vents on its neck glowed white-hot, and it fired the energy back as a concentrated beam of plasma. It absorbed flash fire. Ash cursed. Dodge. Charizard banked left, the plasma searing the air where his wing had been. They adapt, Ash realized. They're analyzing our types. 2 Houndoom rushed May. Blaziken moved to intercept, launching a blaze kick. The Houndoom coordinated perfectly. One ducked the kick while the other lunged for Blaziken's exposed standing leg, metal jaws snapping shut. Blaziken. May screamed. Don't fight them like a duel, Ash roared, leaping over a sweeping tail blade. He delivered a heavy kick to a Houndoom's snout, reinforced by aura. knocking the beast back. They're programmed for combat efficiency. You have to confuse them. How? Don yelled, Mamoswine struggling to keep 3 of the beasts at bay with his tusks. Use your contest moves, Ash shouted. Don't go for damage, go for spectacle, overload their sensors. Blaziken, blaze kick into the mud. Create a smokescreen. Delphox, mystic fire, but spin it. Mamoswine, ice shard. Aim for the eyes, scatter shot. The girls hesitated for a fraction of a second. This went against every battle instinct they had, but they trusted him. Blaziken, spin and kick. May commanded. Blaziken didn't aim for the enemy. He spun like a breakdancer, his flaming legs slamming into the wet earth. Steam and boiling mud erupted in a massive cloud, blinding the sensors of the attacking Houndoom. Now, Delphox, Serena yelled. Delphox twirled her wand. Instead of a direct blast, she created a ribbon of mystic fire that spiraled through the steam, creating a strobe light effect of heat signatures. The Houndoom paused, their mechanical heads twitching as their targeting systems failed to lock onto a single heat source amidst the chaos. Dawn, shatter it, Ash signaled. Mamoswine, ice shard, fan dance. Mamoswine exhaled a blizzard of razor-sharp ice crystals. They hit the superheated steam and shattered into millions of glittering, refractive particles. The clearing became a kaleidoscope of light, heat, and motion. The Houndoom were disoriented, snapping at phantoms, their tactical algorithms crashing under the sensory overload. That's it, Ash grinned ferociously. He felt the shift in momentum. Now, we finish it. He turned to his own partner. Lucario, Aura Sphere. Pick your shots, Greninja. Ash threw his hand out, summoning the bond again. The watery specter of the frog ninja appeared from the mist. Water shuriken. Ash moved with them. He wasn't commanding from the back, he was in the melee. He saw a Houndoom lunging for Serena from her blind spot. Ash didn't have time to call a move. He sprinted, sliding through the mud. He tackled Serena, knocking her out of the path of the metal jaws. The Houndoom's claws raked across Ash's back, shredding the composite vest and slicing skin. Ash! Serena shrieked. Ash gritted his teeth against the searing pain. He rolled, coming up on one knee. His eyes glowed blue. He extended a hand toward the beast. Pulse. He fired a raw blast of aura from his palm, not a Pokémon move, but a human one. The concussive force hit the Houndoom in the chest, crushing its internal plating. The beast flew backward, smashing into a tree and slumping still. Charizard, seismic toss. Clear the field. Charizard grabbed 2 of the disoriented cyborgs, flew them 50 feet into the air, and slammed them back down into the hard earth. Silence fell over the clearing, save for the heavy panting of the trainers and the rain sizzling on Blaziken's wrists. The 12 mechanical beasts lay broken in the mud. Ash stayed on one knee, his breathing ragged. The adrenaline was fading, and the pain in his back was waking up with a vengeance. The world tilted slightly to the left. Ash! Serena was there instantly, her hands hovering over his back. Oh my God! You're bleeding. Badly. May and Dawn rushed over, recalling their Pokémon. We need to move, Ash wheezed, forcing himself to stand. He swayed. The signal. When they go offline, it alerts the handler. You can't walk, May said, her voice surprisingly gentle. She looked at the bloody shreds of his vest. Ash, you took that hit for Serena. Part of the job, Ash slurred. His vision was tunneling. The aura exhaustion combined with the blood loss was shutting him down. Safe house. 2 miles east. Hidden. Under the waterfall. He took one step and his knees buckled. He didn't hit the ground. Charizard caught him with a clawed hand, rumbling a low, worried sound. Put him on Charizard, Dawn ordered, taking charge. Her fear was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. May, take point with Blaziken. Serena, you and Delphox watch our 6. I'll navigate. Ash tried to protest, to tell them he could walk, but his mouth wouldn't cooperate. He felt himself being lifted. The warmth of Charizard's scales was the last thing he felt before the darkness took him. Ash woke up to the smell of antiseptic and dry wood smoke. He blinked, his eyes feeling like they were full of sand. He was lying on a cot in a small, rustic cabin. A fire was crackling in a stone hearth. The rain was drumming on the roof, but it sounded distant, safe. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. A sharp pain lanced through his back. "Don't," a voice said. He turned his head. Serena was sitting in a chair next to the bed, holding a damp cloth. Her gown was gone, replaced by oversized flannel and cargo pants, likely scavenged from the cabin's supplies. "You have 20 stitches," Serena said softly, "and mild aura depletion. If you move, you'll rip them." Ash relaxed back onto the pillow. "Where are the others?" "May is securing the perimeter with Lucario. Don is inventorying the pantry." Serena leaned forward, dipping the cloth in a basin of water and dabbing his forehead. "We found the safe house. It was exactly where you said." "Good," Ash breathed. "Good." He looked at her. In the firelight, she looked tired, but composed. "You guys did good back there," Ash said. "The combination moves. That was brilliance. Standard battling wouldn't have worked." Serena smiled, a small, sad thing. "We were terrified, but when you started shouting orders, it just made sense. It felt like we were back in a performance, just with higher stakes." She paused, her hand lingering on his forehead. "Ash, why did you jump in front of me?" "I told you," Ash said, his voice raspy. "I'm the steward." "Stop it," Serena said, her voice firming. She pulled her hand back. "Don't hide behind the title. You jumped in front of me because you're you. The same Ash who jumped off Prism Tower to save Pikachu." She looked down at her hands. "I've been so scared since the announcement. Scared of the trust, yes. But also scared that you would look at us differently. That you would see us as property." She met his eyes again. "But tonight, you fought for us. Not for the title, you fought for us." Ash held her gaze. The silence in the room was thick, charged with unspoken history. "I never wanted a harem," Ash said, the honesty stark in his voice. "I never wanted servants. I just wanted to be a Pokémon master. But if this is the hand I've been dealt, if protecting you three is the price of winning." He reached out, his hand covering hers. It was rough, calloused, and warm. "Then I'll pay it," he whispered. "Gladly." Serena's breath hitched. A flush rose to her cheeks, distinct even in the dim light. For a moment, she looked like she might lean in, close the distance between them. The door to the cabin banged open. May stomped in, shaking rain off a heavy poncho. Lucario followed, looking stoic. "Perimeter clear," May announced, oblivious to the tension she had just shattered. "But we have a problem." Ash pulled his hand back, wincing as he shifted. "What is it?" May walked to the table and threw a small, black device onto the wood. It was shattered, wires sparking. "Lucario found this embedded in Mamoswine's fur," May said grimly. "It's not a tracker." "What is it?" Dawn asked, coming in from the kitchen with mugs of tea. Ash squinted at the device. "It's a receiver." "Meaning?" Serena asked. "Meaning they weren't just tracking us," Ash said, his face hardening. "They were listening to us." He looked at the girls. "They know we're heading to Hoenn. They know about the plan to infiltrate Devon Corp." "But we haven't discussed that plan yet," Dawn pointed out. "No," Ash said, struggling to sit up despite the pain. "But we were going to. Which means they are predicting our moves. We need to change the game." "How?" May asked. Ash looked at the map pinned to the cabin wall. "We don't sneak into Hoenn," Ash said darkly. "We walk in through the front door. We use the one thing the trust can't hide from." "What?" "The media," Ash said. "You're the muses. I'm the steward. It's time we made our first public appearance." Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Hoenn Gambit Rustboro City was a monument to industry, a sprawling grid of steel and glass that glittered under the smog-filtered sun. It was a city that breathed money and exhaled smoke, the beating heart of the Devon Corporation's global empire. For three fugitives and a newly minted steward, it was the last place anyone would expect them to be. Which was exactly the point. The private shuttle touched down on the executive landing pad of the Devon Tower, the engines whining down to a silence that felt heavier than the roar. The ramp lowered, hissing as the hydraulics disengaged. Ash Ketchum stood at the top of the ramp, adjusting the cuffs of a charcoal gray suit that felt more like armor than the composite vest he'd abandoned. It was tailored, sharp, and uncomfortable. He hated it. But as he looked back at the three women standing behind him, he understood the necessity of the costume. They didn't look like refugees anymore, They looked like royalty. May wore a gown of deep crimson, her hair cascading in loose waves, a stark contrast to the mud-streaked survivor of the Viridian forest. Dawn was in midnight blue, her posture rigid and regal, holding a datapad like a royal decree. Serena wore gold, her expression a mask of practiced, celebrity indifference. "Remember," Ash murmured, his voice low enough that only they could hear. "We aren't hiding. We own the room. If you hesitate, they'll eat you alive." "I grew up in Petalburg," May whispered back, her eyes hard. "I know how to handle sharks in suits. Just make sure you don't punch anyone." "No promises," Ash replied, and stepped onto the red carpet. A phalanx of reporters was already waiting behind the velvet ropes, their cameras flashing in a stroboscopic wave. The news of the Grand Steward's first state visit had been leaked effectively. The trust couldn't shoot them down with cameras rolling, not without exposing themselves to the world. A man was waiting at the end of the carpet. He wasn't Stephen Stone. He was shorter, wider, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and a suit that cost more than Ash's house. "Steward Ketchum." The man boomed, extending a hand that looked manicured to perfection. "Welcome to Rustboro. I am Director Kale. Mr. Stone sends his deepest regrets. Urgent business in the mines keeps him away." Ash took the hand. He didn't squeeze. He just held it, letting his aura pulse slightly, a subtle, static shock that made Kale flinch. "Director," Ash said, his voice smooth, lacking the boyish energy the media associated with him. "We expected a warm welcome. We didn't expect to be kept waiting on the tarmac." Kale's smile faltered for a millisecond. "Apologies. Security protocols. We live in dangerous times." He turned his gaze to the girls, his eyes lingering on May with a look that made Ash's skin crawl. "And the muses. The Sapphire of Hoenn returns home. You look ravishing, my dear. The prize suits you." Kale reached out, his fingers brushing May's bare shoulder in a gesture that was too familiar, too possessive. May stiffened. The smile on her face didn't drop, but her eyes went cold. Before she could pull away, Ash moved. He didn't strike. He simply stepped between them, his movement so fluid it appeared as if he had teleported. He intercepted Kale's hand, gripping the director's wrist. "The muses are not for touching, Director," Ash said. The volume of his voice didn't rise, but the temperature in the air seemed to drop 10 degrees. "They're dignitaries. You will address them with the distance their station requires." The cameras flashed wildly, capturing the confrontation. Kale stared at Ash, shocked by the physical intervention. He tried to pull his hand back, but Ash's grip was like iron. Of course," Kale stammered, sweating. "My mistake, cultural misunderstanding." Ash released him, smoothing his own lapel. "Let's go inside. We have matters of state to discuss." He turned to May, offering his arm properly. "Shall we?" May took it, her grip tight. "Nice save," she breathed as they walked past the stunned director. "I told you," Ash said, looking straight ahead. "I'm not a trophy holder. I'm the guard dog." The interior of the Devon Tower was a cathedral of corporate power. The reception hall was located on the 50th floor, a glass-walled atrium overlooking the city. Waiters circulated with champagne, and the room was filled with the elite of Hoenn, politicians, investors, and high-ranking trainers. The team split up immediately, adhering to the plan they had drafted in the safe house. Dawn and Serena moved toward the center of the room. Their job was, the dazzle, keep the eyes of the room, and more importantly, the security detail, focused on them. Ash watched them go. Serena laughed at a joke made by a steel tycoon, flipping her hair. Dawn was already engaging the head of security in a debate about contest regulations, her hands moving animatedly. They were natural performers. They were weaponizing their charisma. "Okay," Ash muttered to May, who was still on his arm. "Showtime. Where is the server access?" "Sub-level 4, May murmured, sipping a glass of sparkling water she had no intention of drinking. "But the elevators are biometric. You need an executive print." "Or a distraction," Ash said. He tapped his earpiece. "Pikachu, now." Outside, on the ventilation clusters of the 51st floor, Pikachu unleashed a thunderbolt. It wasn't an attack. It was a surge. He fed pure voltage into the building's lighting grid. For 3 seconds, the lights in the ballroom flickered and died. A collective gasp went through the crowd. "Power surge," someone shouted. In the darkness, Ash and May moved. They didn't run. Running drew attention. They power walked into the shadows of a service corridor, guided by Ash's aura sensing the layout of the walls. Door, Ash whispered, finding the handle of the service stairwell. It was locked. Lucario, Ash whispered. The aura sphere emerged from the Pokeball at his belt, not fully forming, just a limb of blue energy that slammed into the lock mechanism, shattering the tumblers. The door clicked open. They slipped inside, the heavy door closing just as the emergency lights flickered on in the hallway. 60 floors down, May said, looking down the spiral of concrete stairs, in heels. Take them off, Ash said, already stripping off his suit jacket and wrapping it around his arm like a shield. We need speed. May kicked the heels off without hesitation, leaving them in the corner. She ripped the slit of her dress higher, turning the gown into a makeshift combat skirt. Lead the way, steward. They descended. Sub-level 4 was silent. Unlike the party above, this floor was sterile, white, and colder than a freezer. It housed the Devon mainframe, the brain of the corporation. It was also guarded. 2 guards stood by the blast doors at the end of the corridor. They weren't wearing standard security uniforms. They wore the matte black tactical gear of the Obsidian Trust. They're inside, Ash whispered, pulling May back around the corner. Devon is fully compromised. 2 guards, May noted. Do we engage? Quietly, Ash said. If they radio it in, the lockdown traps us down here. He reached for a Pokeball. Greninja, Shadow Sneak. He released the ninja Pokemon. Greninja didn't make a sound as he materialized. He looked at Ash, nodded, and blended into the shadows of the ceiling pipes. You take the left, Ash signaled to May. I take the right, on 3. I don't have a Pokemon that can silence a guard, May hissed. You don't need one, Ash said, looking at her. You have Blaziken's speed training. You're a top coordinator. You know how to move. May took a deep breath. She reached for a ball. Glaceon, Ice Floor. Ash nodded. 1, 2, 3. May stepped out. Glaceon, Icy Wind on the floor. Glaceon burst out, exhaling a sheet of frictionless ice across the corridor. The guards turned, startled. Intruders. One began. Greninja dropped from the ceiling behind the right guard, using a finely controlled water pulse to slam the man's head into the wall. He crumpled. The left guard raised his rifle. Ash sprinted. He hit the patch of ice. Instead of slipping, he used it. He slid on his knees, momentum carrying him forward like a missile. He undercut the guard's legs, sweeping him into the air. Before the guard could hit the ground, May was there. She didn't use a Pokemon move. She used a dance move. A high-momentum spin she perfected for the Grand Festival. She drove her elbow into the falling guard's solar plexus. The man wheezed and hit the floor, out cold. Nice hit, Ash said, standing up and dusting off his trousers. I learned it from a Hitmonchan, May said, recalling Glaceon. She looked at her hands, trembling slightly. I just knocked out a mercenary. You protected your team, Ash corrected. He moved to the console. Now, let's see what Mr. Stone is hiding. He pulled a device from his pocket. A Rotom phone modified by Clemont years ago for interface hacking. He plugged it into the terminal. Rotom, scan for Project Obsidian, or God Killer, Ash commanded. The screen flashed rapidly. Accessing. Decrypting. Ash, May said, watching the hallway. Look at this. She was pointing at a monitor on the wall. It showed a live feed of a laboratory. Inside a massive containment tube, a Pokemon was suspended in a green liquid. It looked like a Regice, but the ice was black and circuitry pulsed through its body like veins. Project Regi Null. Ash read the file header that popped up on his Rotom. Synthetic legendaries. They aren't just hunting us, May. They're replacing the gods. Why? May whispered, horror in her voice. Why build a fake Regice? Control, Ash said, his face grim. You can't control a legendary. They answer to nature. But if you build one, you own the weather. You own the land. Download complete. Ash yanked the phone out. We have the data. We need to. The alarms screamed. Not the fire alarm this time. The containment breach alarm. They know, May said, backing up. Kale, Ash growled. He must have checked the biometric logs. The elevator doors at the far end of the hall dinged. They slid open. 6 mechs stepped out. These weren't the scout units from the stadium. These were heavy breach units, armed with riot shields and stun batons crackling with electricity. "Surrender, steward," Kale's voice echoed over the intercom. "Mr. Stone would be very disappointed in your corporate espionage." Ash looked at May. They were trapped in a corridor with no cover. "Trust me?" Ash asked. May looked at the advancing wall of metal. She looked at Ash. "Always." "Charizard!" Ash yelled, throwing the ball upward. The dragon materialized, filling the cramped hallway. He roared, but there was no room to fly. "Dragon claw on the floor," Ash commanded. "Smash it." "What?" May screamed. "We're going down." Charizard's claws glowed with green energy. He slammed them into the floor plating. The metal groaned, sparked, and then sheared. The concrete beneath crumbled under the raw power of a champion-level dragon. The floor collapsed. Ash grabbed May's waist, pulling her close. They fell into the darkness of the sub-basement, debris raining around them, leaving the mechs staring at a gaping hole. They landed on a pile of industrial waste and cable spools in the sewers beneath the tower. Charizard used his wings to buffer the fall, shielding them from the worst of the impact. Ash groaned. Rolling off the dragon's back. "Status?" May was coughing, waving dust away. "Alive. Dress is ruined, though." Ash checked his Rotom phone. "Data is safe, but we're deep underground. No signal." "How do we get out?" May asked, looking around the damp, dark tunnel. "We follow the water," Ash said. "Water leads to the ocean. The ocean leads to the docks." He helped her up. For a moment, they stood close in the dark. May looked at him, dust in his hair, suit torn at the shoulder, eyes glowing with that faint blue aura light. "You knew," she said softly. "You knew they were building fake legendaries." "I suspected," Ash said. "I saw the tech on the Houndoom. It was too advanced for a simple hate group." May reached out, brushing a smudge of dirt from his cheek. "You carry the weight of the world, don't you? Is that why you never settled down? Why you kept running from region to region?" Ash leaned into her touch for a second, a moment of weakness he allowed himself only in the dark. "I don't run, May. I chase. If I stop, bad things happen to good people." He pulled back, the soldier mask sliding back into place. "We have to move. Dawn and Serena are still upstairs." "They'll be fine," May said, her voice confident now. "Dawn has a Piplup that can create a whirlpool in a teacup, and Serena can act her way out of a murder charge. We're the ones in the sewer." Ash smirked. "Fair point." Getting out of the sewers took 20 minutes of wading through sludge. When they finally kicked open a grate and spilled out onto the Rustboro docks, the sun was setting. They were a mess. Ash's suit was destroyed. May's dress was shredded to her knees and soaked in grime. But they were laughing. It was a hysterical, adrenaline-fueled laughter that comes after surviving a building collapse. "Did you see Kale's face?" May gasped, leaning against a crate. "When you grabbed his hand? He looked like he was going to wet himself." "He'll look worse when we leak this data to the Pokémon League," Ash said, wiping slime off his shoe. His earpiece crackled. Ash, do you copy?" It was Dawn. Her voice was calm, but there was the sound of wind in the background. "I'm here," Ash said, pressing the comms. "We're at the docks. Are you safe?" "Safe is relative," Dawn said. "We're on the roof." Kale locked the building down. We improvised." "Define improvised," Ash said warily. "Look up." Ash and May looked up at the Devon Tower. Descending from the roof, riding a massive, makeshift slide made of ice created by Mamoswine, were Dawn and Serena. They were sliding down the spiraling architecture of the building, Mamoswine acting as a sled, with Delphox using psychic energy to keep them on the track. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was a contest move on a lethal scale. They hit the ground floor plaza with a spray of snow and psychic sparks, scattering the waiting security guards like bowling pins. "Go!" Ash yelled, sprinting toward them. They met in the middle of the plaza. Sirens were wailing in the distance. "The data?" Dawn asked, breathless. Ash held up the phone. "Got it." "Then let's get out of here," Serena said, pulling a set of car keys from her dress pocket. "I may have borrowed Kale's personal limo from the valet." Ash stared at her. You stole a limo. Serena winked, a dangerous sparkle in her eyes. I'm the muse of Kalos. I have expensive taste. They ditched the limo 3 towns over, trading it for tickets on a cargo ferry heading north. As the boat cut through the dark waters, leaving Hoenn behind, the group gathered on the deck. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a heavy, somber mood. Ash plugged the Rotom phone into a portable projector Don had packed. He projected the data onto the steel wall of a shipping container. Files scrolled past. Schematics, DNA sequences, and a map. Look, Ash pointed. The map showed 3 locations glowing red. One in Hoenn, Devon Corp, struck through. One in Johto, ruins of Alph. One in Sinnoh, Mount Coronet. The Project Regi Null was just one prototype, Ash said quietly. They have 3 active sites. The next one is in Sinnoh. Mount Coronet, Dawn whispered, her face pale in the holographic light. That's the Spear Pillar. The Temple of Dialga and Palkia. If they're building synthetic legendaries, Serena said, her voice trembling, and they go to the place where space and time are controlled. They could rewrite reality, May finished. Ash stared at the map. The stewardship wasn't just about protecting the girls anymore. It was about preventing the end of the world. We go to Sinnoh, Ash said. We're done running, we're hunting. He looked at the girls. They were dirty, tired, and scared, but they were standing tall. We need cold weather gear, Dawn said, taking charge of the logistics. And we need to upgrade our teams. If we're fighting gods, we need god killers of our own. Ash nodded. He looked out at the ocean, his hand resting on the hilt of his belt where Lucario's ball sat. Sinnoh is going to be cold, Ash murmured. Then it's a good thing, May said, stepping up beside him and leaning her head on his shoulder, that we brought the fire. Ash smiled. For the first time since the tournament, he didn't feel like a protector standing alone. He felt like a leader of a team. To Sinnoh, Ash said. To Sinnoh, they echoed. The fairy horn blasted, a mournful sound that rolled out over the black waves, signaling the start of the next leg of their war. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Frozen Hearts. The cold in Sinnoh was different. It wasn't just a drop in temperature. It was a physical weight, a crushing, silent pressure that sought to turn breath into ice before it could leave the lungs. Mount Coronet loomed above them, a jagged tooth of gray stone and white death piercing the cloud layer. The wind howled through the passes, carrying snow that felt less like flakes and more like ground glass. Ash adjusted the thermal collar of his heavy parka, squinting against the blinding white. He was walking point, as always. Beside him, Lucario trudged through the knee-deep drift, his blue fur matted with ice crystals, his aura acting as a faint heat source that kept the worst of the chill at bay. We need to find shelter, Ash yelled over the wind. The temperature is dropping. If we're caught on the ridge when the sun goes down, we're statues. Behind him, the 3 coordinators were struggling. They were dressed in high-grade winter gear procured in Snowpoint City, thick white coats, insulated boots, and goggles. But the mountain didn't care about gear, it ate energy. Dawn was lagging. She was the native Sinnoh girl, the one who had grown up in Twinleaf and walked these routes on her journey. But she looked smaller now. Every step seemed to cost her something. I know a cave, Dawn shouted back, her voice thin. She pointed a trembling gloved hand toward a cluster of rocks about 300 yards up a steep incline. Route 216 way station. It's abandoned, but it's deep. Lead the way, Ash signaled. They pushed up the slope. The wind fought them, trying to shove them off the mountain, but they linked arms, a human chain anchored by Ash's unnatural stability. When they finally stumbled into the cave mouth, the sudden silence was deafening. Ash didn't relax. He immediately pulled a flare rod from his pack, cracking it to bathe the icy walls in a harsh red light. Clear, he muttered. The girls collapsed against the walls, sliding down to sit on the frozen earth. May pulled her goggles off, revealing eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Serena began checking her extremities for frostbite. But Ash was watching Dawn. She hadn't sat down. She was standing near the entrance, staring out into the blizzard. She was shaking, and it wasn't just from the cold. Dawn, Ash said softly. She jumped, spinning around. I'm fine. We need to start a fire. I'll get Mamoswine too. Dawn, Ash stepped closer. He reached out and gently took her hands. They were vibrating. Look at me. She looked up. Her eyes were wide, filled with a frantic terror she was trying desperately to hide. I can't do this, Ash, she whispered, her voice cracking. Hoenn was political. The forest was survival. But this is God's. You saw the data. They're building things that shouldn't exist. She pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm a coordinator, Ash. I make bubbles and sparkles. I dress up Pokémon. I'm not a soldier like you. I'm not a powerhouse like May. I'm just the girl who lost the grand festival. Ash didn't argue. He didn't offer platitudes. He simply unclipped a Pokeball. Come with me, he said. Ash, it's freezing out there. Just 5 feet, he said. Come on. He led her back to the mouth of the cave, just inside the wind line. He released Charizard. The dragon curled around the entrance, his tail flame acting as a massive campfire, blocking the wind and radiating heat. Ash sat down on a rock and patted the space next to him. Dawn sat, shivering. You think I'm fearless? Ash asked, looking into the fire. I saw you jump off a tower, Dawn muttered. I saw you fight a mech with your bare hands. Yes. Ash laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I'm terrified, Dawn. Every single time. When I saw that beam aimed at you in the stadium, I thought my heart stopped. When we were in the sewers, I was shaking. He turned to her. The firelight danced in his eyes, making them look liquid. Fear is good. Fear keeps you alive. It tells you where the edge is. He pointed to her chest. But you're letting the fear drive. You need to put it in the passenger seat. How? She asked, a tear tracking a warm line through the dust on her cheek. The same way you deal with stage fright, Ash said. When you walk onto a contest stage, and there are thousands of people watching, and you know one mistake ruins everything, what do? Dawn blinked. She thought about the spotlights, the pressure. I focus on my Pokémon. I breathe. I visualize the move. Exactly, Ash said. Battle is just a performance with higher stakes. You don't need to be a soldier. You don't need to be me. You need to be the Platinum Muse. You need to look at the chaos and find the rhythm. He took her hand again. This time, he didn't just hold it. He pushed a pulse of aura into her, a warm, golden sensation that flowed up her arm and settled in her chest, steadying her racing heart. You are the strategist of this team, Dawn, Ash said firmly. May is the hammer. Serena is the shield. You're the knife. You find the weak spot and you twist. Don't forget that. Dawn took a deep breath. The warmth from his hand seemed to anchor her. She squeezed back. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Good, Ash stood up, pulling her with him. Because tomorrow, we're going to kick down the door of a temple and fight a god. And I need you sharp. The storm broke by morning, leaving the sky a piercing, cloudless blue. The sun reflected off the snow with blinding intensity. They reached the coordinates at noon. It wasn't a temple anymore. The spear pillar, the ancient ruins where Sinnoh legends said time and space began, had been desecrated. Massive black cables snaked through the ancient stone columns like parasitic vines. Prefabricated metal structures had been drilled directly into the sacred rock. The hum of heavy machinery vibrated through the soles of their boots. This is wrong, Serena whispered, horrified. This is holy ground. The Trust doesn't care about holy, May spat, adjusting her gloves. They care about power. Ash crouched behind a snowdrift, scanning the perimeter with binoculars. No guards outside. That's bad. Why is that bad? Dawn asked, her voice steady now. Because it means they're all inside, Ash said. Or they don't need guards because they have something better. He stood up. Pikachu, on my shoulder. Lucario, watch our 6. Everyone else, keep your heavy hitters ready. We breach on 3. They moved down the slope, sliding into the excavation pit. The entrance to the inner sanctum had been blasted open, the ancient glyphs scorched by laser cutters. They stepped inside. The interior was a cavern of ice and black metal. In the center of the vast chamber, suspended by magnetic clamps, was the target. It was shaped like Regice, the legendary iceberg Pokémon. But where Regice was a crystalline blue, this thing was obsidian black. Its faceted body didn't reflect light. It swallowed it. Instead of the braille pattern on its face, a single, vertical slit glowed with a malevolent red light. Wires pumped glowing green fluid into its back. Project Reggie Null, Ash murmured. Operational status? It looks asleep, Serena whispered. No, Dawn said, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the floor. Look at the frost patterns. They're radiating toward it, not away. It's absorbing heat. As if hearing her, the red slit on the construct's face flashed. A sound tore through the cavern, not a roar, but a digital screech, like a modem screaming in agony. The magnetic clamps disengaged with a heavy thud. The black giant dropped to the floor, cracking the stone. Scatter! Ash yelled. The construct raised a faceted arm. It didn't fire an ice beam. It fired a beam of pure, entropy-draining void. The black light hit the spot where May had been standing a second before, and the rock instantly turned to dust, its atomic bonds shattered. It's using dark and ice types combined, Dawn analyzed instantly. It breaks down matter. Blaziken, flamethrower, May commanded. Delphox, fire blast, Serena shouted. Two torrents of fire slammed into the construct. The flames washed over the black ice, and vanished. The construct absorbed the heat, its red eye glowing brighter. It eats energy, Ash realized. Special attacks just feed it. The construct turned toward Ash. It moved with terrifying speed for something so large, sliding on the ice like a skater. It swung a massive arm. Lucario, detect. Lucario flashed in front of Ash, crossing his arms in a defensive guard. The blow connected. Lucario was launched backward as if hit by a train, smashing into a pillar with a bone-jarring crunch. Lucario! Ash screamed. The construct pivoted. It wasn't targeting Ash anymore. It had calculated the weakest link. It looked at Dawn. Dawn froze. The fear came rushing back, a cold tide. The thing was unstoppable. Fire didn't work. Physics didn't seem to apply. It raised its arm, the void beam charging. Dawn, move! Serena shrieked. Dawn's legs wouldn't work. She stared into the red eye of the machine. Then, a shadow fell over her. Ash didn't run away. He didn't use a Pokémon. He sprinted across the ice and tackled Dawn, rolling them both behind a slab of fallen masonry. The void beam sliced through the air, shearing the top of the rock off inches above Ash's head. The dust choked them. Ash was on top of her, his body acting as a human shield. He was breathing hard, blood dripping from his nose. The strain of maintaining an aura shield against that void energy was tearing him apart. Ash! Dawn cried, grabbing his jacket. You can't fight that thing, it's a monster. Ash looked down at her. His eyes were burning blue, but his face was pale. It's not a monster, he gritted out. It's a machine. Machines have rules. It eats energy, right? Yes. Then we choke it, Ash said. He grabbed her shoulders. Dawn. Listen to me. It absorbs projected energy. But what about physical mass? What happens if you hit a computer with a rock? Dawn's eyes widened. It breaks. Be the knife, Ash whispered. He rolled off her, standing up into the open. Hey, ugly. Ash flared his aura. It was a beacon, a massive signal of life energy. The construct's head snapped toward him. It screeched, hungry for the feast. Ash, what are you doing? May screamed from across the cavern. Giving you an opening, Ash roared. He spread his arms. Pikachu, ride the lightning, stay on me, don't attack. The construct charged Ash. Dawn scrambled up. She saw Ash standing his ground against a 3-ton god-killer. She saw the absolute trust he had in her. The fear vanished. It was replaced by a cold, crystalline anger. This thing dared to hunt them? This thing dared to hurt him? She grabbed her heavy ball. Mamoswine, she screamed, her voice echoing with the authority of a grand festival finalist. Take center stage. The massive twin-tusk Pokémon materialized. We don't need energy, Dawn yelled, her hand sweeping out in a graceful, lethal arc. We need weight. Mamoswine. Giga Impact. Mamoswine roared. He didn't summon ice or rocks. He simply charged. A sphere of purple kinetic energy wrapped around him, but it wasn't elemental. It was pure, raw momentum. 600 pounds of prehistoric fury moving at 60 miles an hour. The construct was focused on Ash. It didn't see the freight train coming from the flank. Crack. The sound was sickening. Mamoswine slammed into the construct's side. The black ice shattered. The machine shrieked as its chassis buckled. It was knocked off its feet, sliding across the room and crashing into the main computer bank. Now, Dawn commanded, not letting up. May, Serena, physical attacks only, break it apart. Blaziken, high jump kick. May shouted, sensing the shift. Pancham, arm thrust, Serena called, swapping her team instantly. Blaziken flew across the room, driving a knee into the construct's cracked faceplate. Pancham hammered the joints. The construct flailed, sparking. The green fluid leaked out, hissing on the floor. It tried to stand, its red eye flickering. Ash walked forward. He looked exhausted, but he drew a Pokeball. Sceptile, he murmured. Leaf blade. Sceptile appeared in a green blur. He leapt, the blades on his arms glowing not with energy, but sharpening into physical razors. Cut the cord, Ash said cold. Sceptile slashed. The thick cables connecting the construct to the generator were severed. The light in the red eye died. The machine collapsed into a pile of black shards and twisted metal. Silence returned to the cavern. Is it dead? Serena asked, her voice trembling. It was never alive, Ash said. He swayed, stumbling slightly. Dawn was there instantly. She caught him, ducking under his arm to support his weight. I got you, she said. Ash looked at her. He was battered, bleeding, and freezing, but he smiled. Nice hit, Platinum. Dawn felt a flush of pride that warmed her more than the parka. I told you. Mamoswine doesn't care about math. We need to go, May said, kicking a piece of the destroyed machine. This place is unstable. That giga impact cracked the support pillars. As if on cue, a massive stalactite crashed to the floor nearby. The temple was coming down. The descent was harder than the climb. They were running on fumes. They made it back to the waystation cave just as the sun set, turning the snow pink and orange. The spear pillar collapsed behind them, sealing the Trust's secrets, and their failure, under megatons of rock. Inside the cave, they set up camp again. The mood was different this time. The terror was gone, replaced by a grim camaraderie. They had killed a god machine. Ash sat by the fire, letting Serena bandage his hands, which were raw from the cold and the aura exertion. Dawn sat opposite him, heating a pot of stew. She watched him. She saw the way his hands shook slightly, the way he flinched when Serena tightened the wrap. He was mortal. He broke. But he broke so they wouldn't have to. Here, Dawn said, handing him a bowl. Thanks, Ash murmured. Ash, Dawn said. The cave went quiet. May and Serena looked up. You risked everything to make me fight, Dawn said quietly. Why didn't you just have Charizard melt it? Charizard couldn't, Ash said, blowing on the stew. His fire would have been absorbed. But even if he could, we can't win this war if I'm the only one fighting. I need to know that when I fall, and I will fall, eventually, you three can stand. He looked at them, his gaze intense. Today, you didn't just survive. You conquered. The Trust thinks you're damsels. Today, you proved you're dragons. May smirked, leaning back. Dragons in designer coats. I like it. Serena finished tying the bandage. She let her hand rest on Ash's knee for a moment longer than necessary. So, one side down. 2 to go? No, Ash said, his face darkening. The map showed 3 active sites. We destroyed the Sinnoh one. We raided the Hoenn data. That leaves the Johto site. The ruins of Alph, Dawn recalled. The unknown. If they tried to build a Regis here, Ash said, and they were researching Deoxys in Hoenn. I don't want to think about what they're building in a place connected to the dimension of the unknown. He looked at the entrance of the cave, where the wind was howling again. We go to Johto next, Ash said, but first, we need to sleep for a week. Dawn laughed, a genuine, relieved sound. She moved closer to the fire, closer to Ash. She wasn't the scared girl on the slope anymore. She was a muse who had shattered a giant. I'll take the first watch, Dawn said, picking up her heavy ladle like a weapon. You rest, steward. Ash looked at her, surprised. Then he smiled, tipping his hat down over his eyes. Yes, ma'am. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. Masquerade of Roses. The city of Lumiose was a galaxy of light, arrogant and beautiful. Its central prism tower sliced the Parisian night sky, a stark symbol of Colossian elegance and technological obsession. Ash hated the city as much as he loved the wilderness. It was too clean, too structured, and too full of people who mistook manners for morality. But it was Serena's domain, and they needed her contacts. "Keep your aura muted, Ash," Serena instructed, adjusting the silver pin that held the knot of his tailored black tie. Her fingers lingered on his neck, precise and professional. "They're using sensor technology in the filtration system. They're trying to detect unauthorized power sources." "I feel like a target in a fishbowl," Ash muttered, turning his head. "Good," she replied, stepping back to admire her work. "Because tonight, you are. And you need to be the most beautiful thing in the bowl." Serena was breathtaking. She wore a gown of rich crimson that flared out into a tulle skirt, giving her a dangerous silhouette, half ballerina, half duelist. Tonight was her play. They needed high-grade satellite tracking gear and fast transport to Johto, and only a full-scale gala, hosted by Kalos's bureaucratic elite, could provide the camouflage for such a large transaction. The venue was the Salon des Fêtes, a massive ballroom near the base of the Prism Tower. It was packed with the region's ruling class, politicians, celebrity chefs, financiers, all moving with the practiced, predatory grace of high society. May and Dawn were already working the room, keeping the periphery engaged. Dawn was talking finance with an arms dealer, while May was trading performance tips with the Minister of Culture. They were providing the essential distraction, the dazzle. Ash and Serena made their entrance, and the murmurs of the room instantly coalesced into a wave of directed attention. The steward and the muse. The press had been relentless, and every eye was on their dynamic. "Remember the mark," Ash whispered to Serena, his hand resting formally on the small of her back. "Monsieur Dulac. He controls the export licenses." "And the black market contracts," Serena added, her smile never wavering. "He'll be by the champagne fountain, trying to look important." They moved through the crowd, a silent storm in an ocean of pleasantries. Serena navigated the social pitfalls with easy grace, deflecting probing questions about the covenant, with practiced, diplomatic charm. Ash, meanwhile, played the role of the silent, commanding force, his eyes scanning for anomalies, a twitching hand, a flicker of comms gear, anything that smelled like the Obsidian Trust. They found Dulac, a fleshy man in an ivory suit, holding court near a cascading ice sculpture. Serena stepped up, her crimson skirt sweeping the polished floor. "Monsieur Dulac, what a pleasure." The flattery was thick but effective. Dulac preened, leaning in close. "Ah, the muse of Kalos. And the victorious steward. Such a magnificent pairing. We were all quite surprised by the terms of the Grand Prix, Mr. Ketchum. Rather archaic, isn't it? Owning the loyalty of these delightful creatures." Ash felt the cold anger well up, but he kept his expression neutral. He knew this was the bait. "The covenant is not about ownership, Director," Ash said, his voice level. "It is about security. My partners and I share the burden equally." "Burden?" Dulac chuckled, a wet, unpleasant sound. "You sound rather stressed. Perhaps you should let the little muse take a turn off the battlefield. She belongs on the stage, not in the muck." He reached out, his hand grasping Serena's elbow. Serena's composure cracked for a fraction of a second. This time, Ash didn't seize the wrist. He used social physics. He smoothly transitioned the resting hand on Serena's back into a lead for a dance. The music was a slow, traditional waltz. Ash pulled Serena away from Dulac, executing a flawless, sharp turn that left the director blinking in confusion. "My apologies, Director," Ash called over his shoulder. "The steward always claims the first dance with his chosen muse." As they moved onto the dance floor, gliding through the waltzing couples, Serena pressed close to him, her breath warm against his ear. "Thank you," she whispered, the gratitude thick in her voice. "He always tries to dismiss me." "He underestimated you," Ash replied, his grip firm on her waist. "That's his first mistake." The waltz took them to the periphery of the floor, beneath a trellis decorated with blooming roses. The music was distant here. "Ash," Serena said, her voice dropping. "We haven't been honest. Not truly, not about the prize." Ash executed a slow, perfect pivot, their faces inches apart. "What do you need to say?" "I loved you when I was a girl," she admitted, the words raw. "I came back to Kalos to become something worthy of you." When the announcement was made, the truth is, a part of me, the pathetic part, was relieved. I thought the prize made the choice for me. I thought, finally, the universe has handed me what I wanted. She looked at him, her eyes searching his. But I don't want a prize, Ash. I want a partner. I want to know, if we survive this, are you holding my hand because of a binding contract, or because you choose to? Ash pulled her closer, the move possessive and protective. The music swelled, masking his words. The contract is dust, Serena, Ash said, his voice deep and absolute. It was ripped up by the first bullet fired at you. When you made Glaceon turn the floor into an ice rink, you forfeited your title as a muse. When you started leading this operation, you earned the title of commander. He paused, holding her gaze. I hold your hand because I trust you with my life. I trust you with my body. I trust you with the future. If that's not a partnership, I don't know what is. He spun her out, and then pulled her back into a close embrace. The look in her eyes was all he needed. Relief, love, and a fierce, sharp determination. The partnership was sealed. Now, Ash murmured. Look behind Dulac. The waiter refilling his champagne. Left hand, watch. Serena discreetly scanned the waiter. Com link gear. Trust signal. Dulac isn't the seller, Ash concluded. He's the target. Or the Judas. Get May and Dawn. The deal is going down now. The music cut out with a screech. The lights in the ballroom, hundreds of ornate chandeliers, exploded simultaneously, sending a shower of glass and sparks onto the dance floor. The scream of the crowd was instantaneous, a panicked animal noise. Ash reacted before the glass hit the floor. He shoved Serena toward the emergency exit, shouting, May, Dawn, lockdown protocol beta. Ash drew his Pokémon. Lucario, Charizard, light it up. The two giants materialized, Lucario's aura flaring blue, Charizard's tail flame illuminating the chaos in orange. The trust didn't wait. Half a dozen waiters, the bartender, and 4 men dressed as politicians shed their disguises. They were clad in lightweight black combat armor, weapons drawn. Target the steward and the muses. Non-lethal takedown, capture is priority, one of the assassins shouted. The fight exploded in the elegant ballroom. May and Dawn, already halfway to the exit, didn't run. They turned. Mamoswine, Icefang perimeter, Delphox, Will-O-Wisp to blind. Dawn commanded, her voice steady. Mamoswine slammed its tusks into the marble floor, creating a jagged wall of ice that separated the civilian crowd from the immediate threat. Delphox cast dozens of small, disorienting fire orbs that chased the escaping dignitaries, pushing them out of the danger zone. Ash and Serena were facing the main group of assassins. Serena, Ash yelled. Blend it, Serena understood. Delphox, psychic control on the chandelier wires. Ash, follow the fall line. Ash didn't hesitate. He launched himself into the fray. He moved like a blur, his suit jacket now a weapon, blocking a stun dart aimed at his face. Lucario was a whirlwind of bone rush, targeting the soft joints of the assassin's armor. Serena and Delphox, meanwhile, were executing a macabre dance. Delphox used psychic to snag the wires of the remaining, dangling chandeliers. As Ash moved, dodging bullets and engaging in hand-to-hand combat, Serena would jerk the wires, sending heavy crystal lights swinging into the path of the assassins. The battle became a violent ballet, a choreographed tango of attack and defense. Ash would force an assassin back with an aura-infused elbow strike, and the moment the man stumbled, a massive chandelier would swing down, smashing the man's rifle. Serena moved with him, Delphox covering her. When an assassin lunged at Ash from behind, Serena didn't warn him. She fired a psychic-boosted flamethrower at the polished floor near the man's feet, creating a sudden explosion of scalding steam that cooked the air inside his armor. They're too many, May yelled, as Blaziken knocked 3 more assassins off a balcony railing. Ash spotted Dulac, trying to slip away toward a private lift. He's the key. Serena, cover me. Delphox, mystic fire, create a smoke column. Delphox unleashed a column of violet flame that sucked the air out of the center of the room, creating an impenetrable wall of heat haze. Ash sprinted through the haze, his lungs burning. He found Dulac fumbling with the elevator buttons. Ash didn't fight him. He slammed his hand into the director's back, a precise strike of aura that overloaded the man's central nervous system. Dulac went limp, collapsing to the floor. Ash grabbed the man by the collar and hauled him back through the smoke, emerging on the far side where Dawn and May were holding the line. "We have him," Ash gasped, tossing the unconscious director to Dawn. "Dawn, lock him down. Find his comms." "You okay?" May asked, standing over Blaziken, whose wrist was smoking from the intense heat of the battle. "Bruised," Ash said. He looked at Serena, who was leaning against a pillar, panting, her crimson dress ripped at the shoulder but otherwise unharmed. Serena met his gaze. The fear was gone, replaced by a steely, predatory satisfaction. The partnership was real. The bond forged in the waltz was proving lethal on the battlefield. They didn't waste time on interrogation. Dawn, methodical and brilliant, used her own custom-built security equipment to hack into Dulac's personal comms unit. They retreated to the safe anonymity of the city's vast, dark rail system, using a disused industrial line Serena had learned about during her high school training days. Dulac lay bound on the metal floor of the empty carriage. "Ash," Dawn said, holding up the comm unit. "This isn't just a general officer. He was reporting directly to a command structure in Johto, the ruins of Alf." "What did he give up?" Ash asked, leaning over her shoulder. "He confirmed the next project," Dawn whispered, her eyes wide with shock. "They're trying to harness the unknown. They're trying to force them to manifest a physical deity." Ash felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold steel beneath his feet. The unknown were creatures of pure psychic potential, able to alter reality through thought. "What deity?" May asked, kneeling beside them. Dawn scrolled through the highly encrypted file. "They don't want to create Arceus, or even Dialga. They want to create a weaponized manifestation of the one thing all humans fear." She looked up at Ash, her face pale. "They call it Project Nightmare." "We need to get to Johto immediately," Ash said, standing up. "This changes everything. We're not just stopping a weapon, we're stopping mass hysteria." "We can use the old TGV line," Serena said, stepping forward. She had used a silk sash from her dress to staunch a small cut on her hand. She looked at Dulac's unconscious face with cold disdain. "I know the routes that bypass the Kanto checkpoints." She looked at Ash, her eyes burning with resolve. "I'm with you, steward. Every step of the way." Ash nodded, placing his hand on her shoulder. He didn't need the contract, he had her choice. "Dawn, prep the exit strategy," Ash commanded. "May, get Charizard ready for a cold weather flight. We leave Kalos tonight." He looked at the empty tracks stretching into the darkness. Their journey was no longer about survival. It was a race against the creation of a psychic god. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Johto Divide. The ruins of Alf were exactly as the legend described. A geological scar on the face of Johto, perpetually veiled in mist and heavy with the weight of ancient, restless power. The air here didn't feel like air. It felt like a silent, buzzing pressure, the noise of 1,000 unspoken thoughts pressing in from the spirit world. Ash and the Muses had traveled light and fast, using the old Kolosian TGV rail lines and then a grueling overland trek across the Johto wilderness. They now lay prone on a ridge overlooking the dig site, a massive, sunken compound carved into the bedrock around the central ruins. Ash raised his binoculars, scanning the periphery. The trust presence here was less visible than in Sinnoh, but far more professional. Camouflaged bunkers were nestled into the fog. Patrolling agents moved in disciplined formations, their Pokémon, Agrons, Crabats, and Electivires, acting as silent, lethal bodyguards. "They're anticipating us," Ash muttered, dropping the binoculars. "This isn't just a research base, it's a fortress." "They know we're coming from Kalos," Dawn said, tapping coordinates into her customized Rotom phone. "And they know what we hit in Sinnoh. They've tightened the perimeter, but the main psychic power signature is coming from the central temple chamber, deep underground." "The unknown," May whispered, staring into the swirling fog. Ash turned to the three girls. His face was grim, his eyes sharp and decisive. "We have to split," Ash said. The reaction was instantaneous and negative. "Absolutely not," May snapped, sitting up. "We fight as a team. That was the rule." "It's a tactical necessity," Ash countered, his voice firm. "Look at the layout. If we all go toward the central chamber, we hit a kill zone. They will deploy the heavy hitters against Lucario and Charizard, and they'll capture you three alive. We cannot let that happen." We're not going to be liabilities, Ash, Serena said, her voice quiet but carrying the force of their shared history. We've fought alongside you for weeks. We are better than their field agents. I know that, Ash said, the sincerity blazing in his eyes. He reached out and touched Serena's cheek, briefly. And that's why you are the most critical part of this plan. He leaned in, outlining the strategy in a low, intense voice. The trust is paranoid. They want me dead, but they want you three captured because you are the keys, the symbolic vessels of the Covenant. They cannot afford to lose the Muses. So? Dawn asked, her brow furrowed in concentration. So we use that ego against them, Ash explained. Dawn, you have the tactical mind. May, you have the raw, aggressive power. Serena, you have the precision and crowd control. The three of you, with your Pokémon, are going to launch a massive, highly visible attack on the north bunker perimeter. He pointed to a concrete structure near the main access road. Go in loud, fast, and with maximum spectacle. Use your contest moves. Make them believe you are trying to break me out of the perimeter. And you? May asked, her eyes narrowed. I use Lucario's aura stealth to slip through the chaos, Ash said. I go in solo, through the ancient passageways, straight to the central chamber. I am the magnet. While they deploy everything they have to surround and capture you, I stop Project Nightmare before the unknown manifest it fully. Silence settled over the ridge. This was a true leap of faith, and a calculated risk that put them in greater danger while isolating him. You're trusting us to lead the primary engagement, Dawn realized, looking at him with dawning respect. I am trusting the three most competent people I know, Ash confirmed. He looked at May, waiting for the inevitable fight. May held his gaze. She saw the genuine respect, not the condescension of a savior. She nodded once, sharply. Fine. But if you get killed down there, I'm reviving you just so I can kick your butt for dying on my watch. Understood, Ash smiled, a genuine flash of warmth. We'll need a signal, Serena said, taking charge of logistics. A visual confirmation that the manifestation is stopped. A blue flare, Ash said. If you see the flare, retreat immediately. The psychic field will collapse. Go get him, Steward, Dawn said, giving him a tight, focused nod. The attack came at midnight. The ruins were shrouded in a thick, chilling fog, visibility dropping to near zero. Ash was already moving. He was deep in the ancient, underground maze of the ruins of Alph, Lucario at his side, both cloaked in a powerful aura veil that rendered them virtually invisible to both organic eyes and electronic sensors. The sound of the distraction was deafening. Boom! A massive plume of emerald green fire and golden sparks erupted from the northern bunker perimeter, May's Blaziken and Serena's Delphox hitting simultaneously. The coordinated chaos had begun. Good, Ash thought, pushing the concern for the girls aside. They sound angry. He navigated the twisting, narrow tunnels. The deeper he went, the stronger the psychic pressure became. The walls were covered in the alphabet shapes of the unknown. They were faintly glowing, buzzing with collective psychic power. Pressure spike, Master, Lucario warned telepathically, his voice urgent in Ash's mind. Threat approaching. Fast. Ash pressed himself against a cold, slick wall just as a black shadow shot past the corner. He spun out, Lucario right behind him. They faced their first high-tier Obsidian trust agent, General Cyrus Thorn. Thorn was not in a suit. He wore military fatigues, his expression rigid and focused. He was accompanied by a massive, polished Aggron and a sleek crabat that hovered menacingly in the low air. Steward Ketchum, Thorn stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. You walk into a trap. And you walked away from the war, Ash countered, drawing a Pokeball. You work for lunatics, Thorn. We work for order, Thorn corrected. You represent chaos. Your primitive bonds with creatures of nature prevent humanity from achieving true control. Control is an illusion, Ash snapped. Trust is real. Pikachu, Electroweb. Pikachu materialized and immediately blasted a high-tension net of electricity, aiming for the Crabat. Crabat, you turn. Intercept. Thorn ordered. The Crabat slammed into the Electroweb, sacrificing its speed to tear the web apart. Aggron charged, its massive head aimed for Ash. Lucario, Bone Rush. Engage Aggron. Lucario met the Aggron head-on, the clash of aura-infused bone staff and thick metal armor echoing violently through the tight corridor. The force sent cracked spider webbing across the ceiling. Ash focused on Thorn. The general was a martial artist, moving with a disciplined, cold speed that matched Ash's. Thorn darted forward, a wicked, electrified baton appearing in his hand. Ash didn't use a Pokémon for defense. He used his body. Aura flared around his fists. The general's baton connected with Ash's forearm. The electricity surged, but Ash's aura shield dampened the shock to a manageable, searing pain. Ash countered with a low, sweeping kick, reinforced by aura, catching Thorn off balance. Thorn stumbled back, shocked by Ash's physical mastery. "You are an anomaly, Ketchum." "I'm just a guy who hits back," Ash growled. He knew he couldn't afford a prolonged battle. The girls couldn't hold the perimeter indefinitely. Pikachu, quick attack, right at his feet. Pikachu darted forward. Thorn, focused on Ash, didn't react fast enough. The quick attack slammed into his ankles, destabilizing him. Ash moved in. He used the momentum, leaping over Lucario and Aggron's grinding battle. He delivered a crushing, two-handed strike to Thorn's chest, flooding the general with non-lethal, incapacitating aura energy. Thorn gasped, his eyes wide in surprise and pain. He slumped to the ground, his body twitching from the residual aura surge. "Finish it, Lucario," Ash yelled, glancing back at the ongoing battle. Aura sphere. Lucario, battered but victorious, unleashed a point-blank aura sphere. The attack slammed into Aggron, shattering its thick metallic hide. The steel Pokémon collapsed, defeated. Ash didn't pause to celebrate. He snatched Thorn's access card, leaving the defeated general and his Pokémon behind. "Let's go, buddy," Ash gasped, grabbing Lucario and Pikachu's Pokeballs to recall them, giving them a vital moment of rest. He ran deeper into the maze. Meanwhile, on the surface, the muses were proving Ash's trust was well placed. The perimeter was in chaos. The trust agents, expecting Ash to be leading the charge, were struggling to adapt to the coordinated, aesthetically beautiful violence of the coordinators. "Blaziken, sky uppercut, crack the canopy," May ordered, her eyes shining with manic glee. "Show them why Hoenn is fire." Blaziken launched himself into the air, his blazing fist smashing into the thick, camouflaged tree line, showering the trust agents below with debris and splintered wood. "Now, Dawn," May yelled. Dawn, directing the engagement from a reinforced supply crate, didn't hesitate. "Mamoswine, avalanche. Control the flow. Don't damage, just herd." Mamoswine slammed its tusks into the ground, and a controlled wave of snow and ice rolled forward, not burying the agents, but forcing them into a tight corridor. "Serena, end the performance," Dawn screamed. Serena, waiting at the choke point, released her Delphox. The fox Pokémon performed a fluid dance, culminating in a powerful, precise psychic. The energy didn't attack, it lifted. All the agents were suspended 10 feet in the air, spinning slowly in the psychic field, entirely helpless. "The steward needs time," Serena said, her face set. "Keep them locked." "We're running low on power," May warned, recalling Blaziken for a breath. "The psychic field here is draining our teams." "We hold," Dawn stated, tapping her comms. "Ash is through the main corridor. We hold the line." Ash burst through the final gate, gasping for breath. He was in the central temple chamber. The room was vast and filled with the overwhelming, maddening buzz of psychic energy. Cables ran from generators to a central pedestal. And surrounding the pedestal, swirling in a vortex of raw purple light, were thousands of unknown. They were moving too fast to see clearly, constantly shifting their shape. Their presence felt like nails scraping against Ash's sanity. In the center of the vortex, taking shape from the coalescing energy, was Project Nightmare. It wasn't a physical being like the Reggie Null. It was a shifting, dark entity, a churning mass of psychological horror. It looked like whatever the viewer feared most. A gaping void, a spectral hand, a twisting mockery of life. A figure stood before the pedestal, directing the energy. He was tall, thin, and cloaked in the white robes of the high-ranking trust leader. "Welcome, steward," the man said, turning. His face was gaunt, his eyes blazing with fanaticism. "You are too late. The collective fear of humanity is potent. We have created the true god of control." Ash raised a shaking hand. The psychic field was crushing his aura, making his legs feel like lead. Pikachu, Ash whispered, recalling the little mouse was exhausted. We have to stop this. The manifestation is complete, the trust leader announced triumphantly. Behold the face of the inevitable. Behold the death of hope. The swirling energy coalesced. Project Nightmare solidified, a massive, skeletal entity that looked like a mixture of the shadow Pokémon from previous experiments and the twisting darkness of eternity. And then it moved. It didn't attack Ash, it didn't roar. It simply reached out its vast, dark psychic hand and slammed it down onto the pedestal where the leader stood. The trust leader screamed, but the psychic hand didn't crush him, it consumed him. He vanished in a flicker of dark light, the zealot destroyed by his own creation. Ash stared, horrified. It's not controllable. The skeletal entity turned its shifting gaze toward Ash. The pressure intensified tenfold. Ash felt his mind recoil, assaulted by visions of his worst failures, his deepest fears. Pikachu turning to dust, his friends dying, the world falling silent. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. This is not a weapon, Ash gritted out. It's a plague. He reached for the flare gun, his hand shaking violently against the psychic storm. The entity raised its hand, preparing to crush the only remaining human in the room. Ash aimed the flare gun at the ceiling, not at the entity, but at the ancient carvings above, hoping to pierce the outer layer. He pulled the trigger. The flare shot upward, shattering the rock and streaking into the night sky, a bright blue star against the backdrop of the ruins of Alph. Blue flare. Retreat. Ash knew the girls would be safe, but he was trapped. He was face to face with a god born of pure psychic dread, and he had used up his final card. Come on, you monster, Ash whispered, forcing his eyes open, staring into the face of his own annihilation. Let's see if you can break me. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The anti-deity the blue flare, a burning streak of desperate hope against the black sky, faded quickly, but its light was blindingly visible to the muses retreating on the surface. May was the first to realize the terrible truth. That wasn't the victory signal, she whispered, skidding to a halt in the snow-dusted fog. Her eyes, usually so fiery, were wide with dawning horror. That was a sacrifice. He signaled us out so he could stay. Dawn, the strategist, was already pulling up the energy readings on her phone. The psychic output. It just went critical. It's overwhelming the surrounding area. It's the highest density signature I've ever seen. Ash is in the center of a localized mental catastrophe. Serena didn't speak. She just looked at the gaping hole in the earth that led to the central chamber. Her face, usually so composed, was contorted with panic and a fierce, blinding resolve. She didn't need data. She could feel it, the terror, the pain, the cold exhaustion of the man she loved. The retreat is cancelled, Serena stated, her voice shaking but firm. She pulled Delphox's Pokeball from her belt. We're going back in. May didn't argue. Blaziken is ready. We burn our way through the walls if we have to. We use the Covenant, Dawn announced, her breath coming out in ragged puffs. We link our teams. Ash taught us synergy, now we use it for brute force rescue. They turned and plunged back into the ruins. Ash was gone, not physically but mentally. He was on his knees on the cold, ancient floor, his body racked by tremors, blood trickling from his ears and nose. Project Nightmare loomed above him, a vast, skeletal shadow constantly shifting its form based on the psychic resonance of his subconscious. In his mind, he was trapped in a nightmare loop. He was 8 years old again, standing alone on the docks, watching Pikachu walk away forever. He was failing every friend he had ever made, seeing their faces contorted in blame. The psychic entity wasn't hitting him with power, it was hitting him with regret. You are incompetent. You are the flaw. You are the chaos that must be purged. The entity solidified into the shape of his own greatest fear, Ash Ketchum, champion of the world, sitting alone on a gilded throne, his friends alienated, his Pokémon subservient, his heart turned to stone. This is the true steward. Power without connection. Embrace the emptiness. Ash roared, a primal, choked sound. He fought back not with a move, but with a memory, the feeling of Pikachu nuzzling his neck after a victory, the genuine, non-contractual love of his friends. No, Ash whispered, spitting blood. I trust them. He fought to lift his last available Pokeball, Lucario's Mega Evolution. He slammed his hand against the key stone embedded in his glove. A flash of blinding light erupted from the ball, meeting the raw psychic energy of the temple. Lucario emerged, transforming instantly into his Mega form. Aura spikes lengthened, power surging. Mega Lucario, Aura Sphere, full power. Ash screamed, forcing the command through the crushing mental pressure. Mega Lucario channeled the energy, ignoring the psychic assault. He unleashed a colossal sphere of pure aura, a blinding blue sun that slammed directly into the chest of the fear god. The impact was cataclysmic. The psychic entity shrieked, momentarily shattering, collapsing the mental assault. But the effort was too much. Mega Lucario roared, the strain of fighting a psychic deity forcing his massive form back into regular Lucario, who instantly fainted, his body smoking from exertion. Ash collapsed entirely, the psychic backlash overwhelming his physical aura protection. He had bought a minute, but he was defeated. It was in that moment of absolute defeat that Director Silas Vane emerged. He walked into the chamber from a hidden access panel, flanked by 6 elite Obsidian Trust officers who carried rifles aimed not at Ash, but at the shifting remains of the defeated psychic entity. Vane wore polished, clinical armor, and his face was cold, intellectual disdain. "Impressive, Steward Ketchum," Vane said, his voice calm, ringing through the shattered temple. "You managed to defeat your own greatest fear. A shame you were too late to prevent the manifestation." Vane approached the collapsed Ash. "The Covenant, the bonds, the emotions, they create uncertainty. We sought to harness the unknown to create the ultimate weapon against chaos. The entity was a beautiful proof of concept, but flawed. It lacks a control mechanism." He kicked Lucario's unconscious body aside with a polished boot. "But you, Steward, are not flawed. You are the perfect control mechanism. Your raw aura, your connection to these 3 muses. You are the final, messy variable." Vane produced a device, a massive, metallic sphere covered in pulsing red circuits. It hummed with contained, dangerous energy. "The anti-deity framework," Vane stated, clicking a switch. "An aura shackle, designed to contain the chaotic energy of the unknown and the latent power in your bloodstream. We can't kill the gods, Steward, but we can shackle their vessels." He placed the sphere above Ash's body. The red light intensified, and Ash felt a searing, cold pain in his chest as the device began to siphon his very essence. Vane looked at the collapsing, spectral remnants of Project Nightmare. "Once we have absorbed your connection, we will use the muses, the original keys, to lock this creature into stasis. The era of the Pokémon gods ends here." Vane didn't finish the sentence. The sudden sound of a massive, explosive roar tore through the tunnel. May, Dawn, and Serena burst into the central chamber. They didn't come in one by one. They came as a single, devastating unit. Blaziken, high jump kicked the framework. May screamed. "Mamoswine, charge the flanking agents," Dawn commanded. "Delphox, psychic control on Vane's armor," Serena directed. The coordinated attack was flawless, executed with the brutal efficiency of people fighting for the person they love. Blaziken, moving with impossible speed, vaulted over the bodies of the defeated agents and slammed a flaming knee directly into the aura shackle device above Ash. Crash. The sphere exploded, sending shrapnel and sparking circuits flying everywhere. The backlash of raw, psychic energy was immense, washing over the chamber. Vane staggered back, momentarily stunned. "Insolent muses. You chose to run back to your master." "He's not our master," Serena spat, her eyes blazing, Delphox's psychic power locking Vane's rigid armor into place. "He is our shield. And you just broke it." Dawn, meanwhile, had Mamoswine launch a coordinated avalanche that buried Vane's entire flanking guard under tons of snow and rock, sealing them in the tunnel entrance. The collapse of the aura shackle had a massive, chaotic effect on the chamber. The contained unknown, momentarily tethered to Ash's collapsing aura, were instantly released. The psychic entity above them, Project Nightmare, groaned and imploded, dissolving back into hundreds of individual, confused, fluttering unknown symbols. The entire temple began to buckle. The ceiling groaned. "It's collapsing," May yelled, recalling Blaziken. "We have to go." Vane, momentarily freed by the mental fatigue of Delphox, stumbled toward Ash, drawing a pistol. "You will not leave with the vessel." Serena didn't look at Vane. She looked at Ash. Dawn, May, grab him. May and Dawn lunged for Ash's body. He was unconscious, his skin cold and clammy, his pulse thready. May grabbed his legs. Dawn grabbed his shoulders. Serena turned to Vayne, her eyes colder than the Reggie Null they had destroyed. She didn't use a Pokémon move. She used a simple, practiced flourish, a sweeping motion of her arm honed by years of performance. Delphox, Fire Blast. Cover the exit. Delphox unleashed a torrent of fire and psychic power, blasting the tunnel behind them, creating a massive explosion that sealed Vayne in the collapsing temple forever. The girls dragged Ash's inert body across the floor. They ran, fueled by pure adrenaline, scrambling up the narrow passages as the stone groaned and cracked above them. They burst out of the ruins of Alph just as the entire central compound, the cradle of Project Nightmare, collapsed into a massive, earth-shaking sinkhole, swallowing the dreams and destruction of the Obsidian Trust. They stopped only when they reached the relative safety of the Johto woodlands, miles from the epicenter. Ash lay on the forest floor. He wasn't moving. His body was covered in scrapes and bruises, but the true damage was internal. The psychic overload, the aura siphoning, the brutal defeat at the hands of the Fear God. May knelt beside him, checking his pulse with trembling fingers. He's alive, she whispered, tears tracking through the grime on her cheeks. But he's gone. He's in a coma, Dawn confirmed, her voice technical, trying to stave off the raw emotion. The psychic backlash was too severe. We can't move him far, but we have to get him to a safe place. A hospital will report us. Serena took Ash's limp hand, pressing it against her face. He fought the nightmare until he broke. He sacrificed himself so we would be safe. The moon broke through the clouds, illuminating the three women huddled over the defeated body of the steward. The war isn't over, May said, looking up at the sky, her jaw set. Vayne is gone, but the trust is vast. We have the data, and we still have the Covenant. They still want us. Dawn nodded, pulling out a first aid kit. We saved the steward. Now we become the stewards. Serena looked down at Ash, her eyes resolute. She was no longer a muse in search of a hero. She was a commander with a mission. We find a healer, Serena stated, taking charge. And then we finish the job he started. We track the remaining trust cells. We dismantle the entire organization, piece by piece. The three muses, alone and heartbroken, lifted the weight of the wounded steward and carried him into the dark forest. Their leadership had begun. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8, The Commander's Covenant. The sanctuary was a secret known only to the descendants of the ancient Aura Guardians. A deep, crystalline cavern hidden beneath the jagged peaks of Mount Silver, shielded from modern surveillance by the wild, chaotic energies of the surrounding region. Ash Ketchum lay on a thick pallet of furs near a naturally occurring warm spring, his face pale and slack. He was alive, stabilized by the concentrated natural energy of the mountain, but the psychic trauma from Project Nightmare had sunk him into a coma. The burden of leadership, survival, and war now rested entirely on the three muses. Dawn sat cross-legged near Ash, monitoring his vital signs with a crude, salvaged medical scanner. May stood guard at the cavern in trance, her gaze fixed on the dense fog outside. Serena was at a carved stone table, spreading out their only asset, the fragmented data stolen from Devon Corp and Johto. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the rhythmic drip of water. They were exhausted, grieving, and operating on pure, desperate necessity. We need a move, May finally broke the silence, turning from her post. Her voice was low and tight. We can't just sit here playing nursemaid. Every hour we wait is an hour the Trust spends replacing Vayne and shoring up their final defenses. Patience is our only armor, May, Dawn replied, without looking up from the scanner. Ash took a physical blow from a psychic god. We move him before his aura has stabilized, and he dies. That would be a failure worse than any defeat. We can't wait for him to wake up and save us again, May retorted, frustration evident in her stance. We need to hit them hard. We leak the data. We go public. We force the League to intervene. And put ourselves in a media circus that the Trust can exploit? Serena interjected, looking up from the spread of maps and schematics. Her tone was sharp and controlled. No, we leak the data strategically. We need an ally who is powerful enough to believe us, discreet enough to protect us, and connected enough to provide the resources for the final assault. Serena tapped a point on the schematic, a heavily coded satellite uplink diagram. Our priority is communication. We need to reach Cynthia. Cynthia? May scoffed. The Sinnoh champion? She won't talk to a bunch of fugitives? She will talk to the muses, Serena corrected, rising to her feet, her presence commanding. We use the Covenant. The threat to Sinnoh's ancient sites is real. Dawn, you are the technical expert. Can you bypass the global encryption and open a direct, private channel to her headquarters? Dawn stared at the comm unit. She looked at Ash's still, pale face, remembering his whispered faith in her abilities. I can, Dawn said, the uncertainty gone, replaced by the cool focus Ash had shown her on Mount Coronet. But we have to use the satellite link now. It's a one-shot window before the Trust tracks the frequency. The communication was tense, encrypted, and agonizingly slow. Dawn worked furiously, sweat tracking down her temple despite the cavern's coolness. The projector displayed the fragmented face of Cynthia, Sinnoh's reigning champion, rendered in cold, skeptical blue light. You claim to be operating under the covenant of the Grand Steward, Cynthia's voice crackled through the comms. Yet you are 3 women, on the run, presenting evidence of mythical weaponry. Where is Ash Ketchum? He is currently incapacitated, stabilizing from a psychic assault, Dawn replied, her fingers flying over the keyboard, routing the data. He fell protecting us, May cut in, her voice low and fierce. He fell saving your region from a synthetic god. We're presenting you with proof of Project Reggie Null and the unknown manifestation. This isn't a theory, champion. It's war. Serena stepped into the light, her hands resting on the table. She didn't plead. She demanded. The Obsidian Trust is run by a paramilitary command structure. They aim to replace every legendary Pokémon with a controllable machine. They're operating from a massive, mobile base. We have the data on its schematics, but we need logistical support and a fighting force. Cynthia was silent for a long moment, reviewing the holographic schematics of the Reggie Null and the captured trust files. The magnitude of the conspiracy, laid bare by the 3 coordinators, was impossible to dismiss. You are showing remarkable competence, Cynthia finally said, a note of grim respect entering her voice. But you are also highly volatile targets. If I move to assist you, the entire league is compromised. Before Serena could argue, the cavern alarm flared, not the main entry, but a peripheral warning system Lucario had set up. Intrusion, May barked, spinning to grab her Pokeballs. 4 signatures. They're lead trackers. They found the residual aura. Champion, Dawn said quickly, her face pale. Our window is closed. We're about to be engaged. Your decision. Cynthia looked at the 3 women, who were instantly transforming from diplomats into soldiers. I will need undeniable proof of your capacity to lead. Survive this, and I will believe you. The transmission cut out. Fine, May growled, releasing Blaziken and Snorlax. Let's show the champion what happens when you treat the muses like children. The fight was brutal, swift, and highly coordinated. The Trust had sent a Black Ops team, 4 agents with Dark-type specialists, Tyrannitars, Hydreigons, designed to crush an aura user like Ash and overwhelm a small, isolated team. The girls met them in the cavern's main chamber, defending the path to the inner spring where Ash rested. May was the frontline commander. Blaziken, Sky uppercut on the support columns, Snorlax, roll for cover. Blaziken smashed the columns, sending down a rain of jagged stone and dust that forced the enemy Tyrannitars back. Snorlax's massive bulk provided an immovable shield, absorbing dark pulses while May directed Blaziken's strikes. Dawn was the tactical analyst. She didn't fight head-on. She directed the flow of the battle, Mamoswine creating trenches and ice obstacles to slow the enemy advance, while Togekiss used status moves. Hydreigon is airborne. Serena, now. Serena was the precision striker. She didn't engage the enemy Pokémon, she engaged the trainers. Delphox, psychic control. Target the comm units. Pancham, dark pulse on the nearest agent. The muses fought like a single organism. May created the chaos and the shield. Dawn created the terrain. Serena exploited the openings, focusing on disabling the enemy's command and control. One trust agent managed to slip past the defense, sprinting for the opening that led to Ash's spring. Stop, May roared, recalling Blaziken for a rapid swap. But Dawn was faster. Mamoswine, Rock Slide, seal the entrance. Mamoswine slammed its tusks, causing a localized cave-in that trapped the agent just yards from Ash's resting place. The psychic pressure from the battle, the desperation, the power of the Pokémon, the raw adrenaline, was overwhelming the sanctuary's defensive field. And then, something snapped. From the inner spring, where Ash lay unconscious, a massive, brilliant blue pulse of aura erupted. It wasn't an attack. It was a purely defensive shockwave, a raw outpouring of the steward's protective instincts. The pulse slammed into the remaining enemy Pokémon, not damaging them, but momentarily paralyzing them, freezing them in mid-movement. It ripped the comm links from the agent's ears, overloading the tech. The muses paused, turning in shocked silence to the spring. Ash's eyes were open. They were still dull, unfocused, but undeniably awake. He was breathing shallowly, his face pale. "No more," Ash whispered, his voice thin, rough with disuse. "Stay away." The pulse faded. The remaining trust agents, terrified by the unconscious power emanating from the steward, recalled their Pokémon and fled through the main entrance, leaving behind their defeated comrades. The battle was over. May, Dawn, and Serena rushed to Ash's side. "Ash, you're awake," Serena cried, collapsing onto the furs, tears streaming down her face. Ash looked at her, his eyes trying to focus. He reached out a trembling hand, not to command, but to touch. "You won," Ash rasped, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. He looked past them, toward the wreckage of the chamber. He saw the systematic, calculated destruction, the tactical precision. He saw the proof of their absolute competence. "You didn't need me," Ash murmured. "We always need you, Steward," May said, her own voice thick with emotion. "But we can handle the perimeter." "And the strategy," Dawn added, checking the scanner. Ash closed his eyes, relief washing over his face. He hadn't just been saved, he had been replaced. The burden had been lifted. Minutes later, the comms crackled back to life. "Steward Ketchum, Muses," Cynthia's voice returned, stronger now, laced with profound respect. "My analysis team just tracked the seismic and energy spikes from your location. Your perimeter defense was definitive. I have seen enough." "The Trust is building their final base," Ash said, his voice stronger, though still weak. "A massive, mobile facility." "It is a sky citadel," Cynthia confirmed. "A prototype flying fortress, hidden high above the clouds in the frigid regions near the Arctic Circle. The final phase of their Project Deicide. They're mobilizing to use the raw power of the legendary Pokémon Zekrom and Reshiram to power their synthetic framework." "We're going to the Arctic," Ash stated, trying to sit up. Serena pushed him back down gently but firmly. "No, we are going. You are the intelligence asset now. The strategist. You need weeks to heal." "The Covenant is ours now," Ash, May said, crossing her arms. "You brought us together. We finish the war." Ash looked at the determined faces of the three muses, his partners, his commanders, his shield. He was still the steward, but they were the force. He nodded, a gesture of absolute surrender and trust. "Tell me the plan, Commander." Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Obsidian Citadel. The world above the Arctic Circle was a vast, unforgiving expanse of white and swirling, crystalline fog. Hidden within that chaos, using powerful optical baffling technology, was the Obsidian Citadel. A colossal, pitch-black flying fortress, the ultimate operational base of the Trust. The assault began at dawn. Champion Cynthia provided the initial cover, a coordinated aerial blockade by a contingent of League-loyal trainers, creating the massive, visible distraction necessary to draw the Citadel's external defenses. Inside a modified, stealth cargo plane, the true strike team prepared. Ash, though still weak, was sitting upright, rigged with medical sensors, his face gaunt but focused. He was the eye in the sky, feeding the stolen schematics and real-time intelligence to the three commanders. The muses were unrecognizable from the panicked girls of Chapter 1. They wore sleek, black and silver tactical gear, armed with specialized equipment, and exuded the cold confidence of veteran operatives. "The infiltration point is the lower maintenance hatch, level 3, Ash's voice crackled through their private comms. "It's shielded against thermal but not kinetic stress. May, you hit the locking mechanism. Dawn, you jam the internal sensors." "Copy that, Advisor," May confirmed, pulling down her visor. "Serena and I will neutralize the initial resistance," Dawn added. May, use Charizard's heat signature to mask our initial ascent. The plan was a calculated suicide run. The cargo plane dropped them close to the Citadel's hull. May released Charizard, who unleashed a massive plume of fire at the base of the fortress, creating a searing blind spot. May, Dawn, and Serena then attached their grapples to the hull. They climbed, Mamoswine stabilizing their grip on the icy metal, Delphox using latent psychic energy to shield the vibrations of their movements. They breached the maintenance hatch with synchronized precision. Charizard's flamethrower weakened the joint, Blaziken's superheated blaze kick shattered the lock. Mamoswine's sheer weight pulled the heavy hatch open. They dropped inside the sterile, humming silence of the obsidian citadel. The interior was a labyrinth of white steel and glowing red energy conduits. The air was pressurized and charged with static. They moved as a perfect tactical unit. At the first sign of mechanized patrol, Dawn would use Togekiss's air slash to disable the drone's rotors. Serena would use Pancham's dark pulse for a precise non-lethal knockout of the human agent. And May would clear the path with Blaziken's raw, overwhelming force. But the citadel was too large. Ash's voice was urgent in their ears. The power core is on level 10. The command bridge, where the suppression field is controlled, is on level 12. We can't secure both at once. We split, Serena stated, not asking. May, you take the power core. Focus on the conduits. Don't engage the legendaries. Just find the overload switch. Dawn and I will take the bridge, Serena continued. We need to drop the shield so Cynthia's fleet can punch through the Citadel's defenses. Understood, May confirmed, her eyes focused on the junction ahead. I'll see you on the command bridge. They split, running into the opposite corridors. May. The breakers charge. May's path was a siege. She faced heavy resistance, not from agents, but from hardened defenses, automated turrets and heavy armor Pokémon. She reached a wide, circular corridor guarded by General Chorus, a massive man encased in a thick exoskeleton, commanding a customized, heavily armored Aggron. The Muses belong in captivity, not combat, Chorus roared, his voice echoing through the comms. I'm here to break things, General, May retorted, a wide, challenging grin splitting her face. Chorus deployed a wall of reinforced steel plating. Try to break this, Muse. May didn't hesitate. She knew her weakness was patience. Ash had taught her to trust her own devastating momentum. Snorlax, Belly Drum, Blaziken, focus all power into a single move. Snorlax slammed its massive belly, sacrificing defense for a terrifying surge of attack power. Blaziken, roaring, absorbed the momentum and launched the most powerful brave bird he could muster. The flaming, unstoppable force of the attack was aimed not at Aggron, but directly at the reinforced wall. Boom! The structural integrity failed. The wall ripped apart, the explosion deafening. Chorus staggered, blinded by smoke and debris. May ran through the gap, ignoring the shattered pieces of the wall. Blaziken engaged Aggron, keeping the threat contained. Ash, tell me the secondary conduit, May gasped. Level 9, East Corner, structural weak point, Ash's voice replied instantly. May didn't waste time on the general. She left Chorus to the chaos, jumping down the massive hole her team had created, following the red light of the power core. Dawn. The controller's chess match. Dawn and Serena moved swiftly, encountering the Citadel's intelligence specialists, the people dedicated to preventing tactical hacking and infiltration. Dawn was the target of Head of Systems Riven, a sleek, arrogant woman who deployed a team of Porygon Z and Electivire to overload Dawn's comms and trap her in a holographic maze. You're a child with a toy phone, coordinator, Riven sneered through the security speakers. You can't touch Citadel systems. Dawn stopped, calm amidst the flashing holographic walls and screaming static. Ash had taught her that chaos was merely complexity. You rely on tech, Dawn stated, tapping her custom-built Rotom phone. I rely on geometry and probability. Togekiss, roll for coverage. Mamoswine, use Ice Shard, scatter the signal. Togekiss began weaving complex circles of light, confusing the Porygon Z's targeting systems. Mamoswine used Ice Shard to target the discrete electrical junction boxes in the ceiling, plunging sections of the corridor into darkness. Your systems are too rigid, Riven, Dawn said, calmly typing code into her phone. Ash said that in a chaotic environment, The simplest, most elegant solution wins. She finished the code, initiating a sequence that caused all the holographic walls to collapse inward, temporarily crushing the Porygon Z into their base units. She then used the Chaos Mamoswine, charge the main server bank. Mamoswine slammed into the bank, disabling the localized shield generator. The path to the command bridge was open. Bridge secure, Dawn reported to Ash, a hint of breathless triumph in her voice. Serena. The finisher's precision. Serena found herself in the polished, minimalist waiting area of the command bridge, facing the most insidious threat. Propagandist Lyra, Vayne's replacement, a master of emotional manipulation and mind games. Lyra deployed a team of psychic types, Alakazam, Gardevoir. That didn't aim to fight, but to demoralize. You look beautiful, Muse, Lyra purred, her voice a soothing echo in the room. But you're foolish. He is a child who uses you. He binds you with the illusion of love, yet he sends you to die while he lies safely in a cave. The mental assault began, images flashing in Serena's mind. Ash turning his back, Ash choosing someone else, Ash's love being a lie. Serena staggered, clutching her head. This was the same psychic pressure from the ruins of Alph, weaponized. But Ash had taught her the ultimate defense, emotional clarity. Delphox, psychic control, form a sphere around us. Delphox erected a bubble of shimmering psychic power, dampening the mental attack. He does not bind me, Serena whispered, tears blurring her vision. He trusts me. He gave me a choice. She opened her eyes, her expression settling into a serene, cold focus. She didn't rage. She found the elegant weakness. Pancham, Dark Pulse, Precise Strike. Target the speakers. Pancham fired a focused burst of Dark Pulse, aiming at the source of Lyra's weapon, the polished, custom-made speakers that broadcast the demoralizing waves. The speakers shattered. The psychological attack failed. Lyra shrieked, her own Alakazam confused by the sudden silence. Serena moved with the practiced, predatory grace of a Colosian duelist. She knew the fight was won. Delphox, Fire Blast. Contain her. The flame enveloped Lyra and her Pokémon. Serena didn't wait for the knockout. She was the finisher. Dawn arrived moments later, Mamoswine shattering the blast doors to the command bridge. Status? Dawn demanded. Bridge clear, Serena said, stepping over the defeated propagandist, her high-tech tactical boots silent on the cold steel. Ash, we're at the control panel. Ready to drop the shield. The Muses stood on the command bridge, the entire Arctic expanse visible through the panoramic window. Below them, they could see Cynthia's fleet surging toward the citadel. May's down on level 9, initiating the overload sequence now, Ash's voice relayed. Dawn, you have the external shield panel, central console. Dawn plugged her phone into the main terminal. Code scrolled rapidly. Shields dropping in T-60 seconds. May's voice cut in, strained. Core breached. The legendaries. Ash, they look terrible. They're chained, draining power into a gigantic synthetic framework. I'm finding the overload switch now. 40 seconds, Dawn warned. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. A colossal shadow fell over the command bridge. A voice, smooth and deep, echoed from the center of the room. It wasn't Vayne's cold disdain. It was a calm, profound sense of messianic righteousness. A performance worthy of the Muses, the voice said. A figure stepped from the shadows of the command center. The Sovereign. He was old, white-haired, dressed in simple, flowing white robes that contrasted starkly with the black steel. He held a staff tipped with a crystalline shard that pulsed with captured energy. Welcome to Project Deicide, the Sovereign said, his eyes filled with the terrible peace of a true fanatic. I am the future. And you, children, are the final relics of the past. 30 seconds, Dawn muttered, still working the console. I expected Vayne to be foolish enough to die, the Sovereign said, gesturing to the panoramic window where Cynthia's fleet was visible, now dangerously close. But I underestimated the steward's influence. You are not Muses, are you? You are champions in disguise. He raised his staff. The shield will remain, and your champion's allies will be annihilated. 15 seconds. Dawn yelled. The Sovereign smiled, a chilling expression of total confidence. You will be locked in here to witness the genesis of the new world. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The New World Order. The command bridge of the Obsidian Citadel was a terrifying stage. The Sovereign stood before the panoramic window, his white robes flowing, his crystalline staff pulsing with the hijacked power of 2 captive legendary Pokémon. "The shield holds," the Sovereign announced, his voice ringing with cold finality. "Cynthia's fleet is now within our effective range. You will watch your allies turn to ash, and you will understand the necessity of control." Don's fingers flew across the console, confirming the grim reality. He's rerouted the shield conduits directly to his staff. "I can't override the manual lock." Serena and Don stared at the man who held the fate of the world in his hand. "Effetst." May's voice, strained and euphoric, cut through the comms. "Shields are offline." "Not manually, Don. I just overloaded the central core. The circuits are melting." The lights on the command bridge flickered violently. The Sovereign's comms shattered. He spun around, his eyes wide with fury. The crystal staff glowed a dangerous, unstable red. "Insolent little coordinator," he shrieked. He aimed the staff directly at Don, who was frozen at the console. The captured energy of Zekrom and Reshiram coalesced into a blinding torrent of blue and white light. "Now!" Serena screamed. They had milliseconds. The muses moved as a perfect, lethal triangle. Serena lunged forward, not toward the Sovereign, but toward the nearest console. "Delphox, Psychic, smash the external viewports." Delphox unleashed a concentrated blast of psychic power. The panoramic window, miles above the Arctic, shattered outward in a cascade of pressurized, splintering glass. The sudden breach of atmosphere, the freezing wind, the shrieking decompression, slammed into the room. The Sovereign staggered, momentarily blinded and buffeted by the icy gale, his shot going wide, incinerating the command console where Dawn had stood a moment before. Dawn, seizing the advantage, scrambled to her feet. "May, the core is unstable. We need a conduit." May's voice, still raw with effort, replied, "It's hitting maximum saturation. Hurry." The Sovereign recovered, roaring in frustration. He raised the staff again, preparing to end them both. Ash's voice, distant and weak, suddenly pierced the chaos, not through the comms, but directly into their minds, carried on a thread of raw, desperate aura. "Don't fight the power. Redirect it. Channel it through him." The realization hit them simultaneously. They couldn't win by suppressing the energy. They had to overwhelm the Sovereign's control system with the raw, chaotic power of Bond. "Dawn, create the anchor," Serena yelled. "May, feed the conduit." Dawn responded instantly. "Mamoswine, Blizzard, cover the floor." Mamoswine unleashed a furious storm of ice, encasing the shattered bridge floor in thick, slick frost. The Sovereign, surprised by the icy anchor, was momentarily unable to move his feet. May's voice confirmed the flow. "Conduit open, power surge initiated." Serena made the final move. She didn't use a psychic move on the man. She used it on the connection. "Delphox, channel the ice," Serena commanded, her eyes locked on the Sovereign. Delphox used psychic to mold the freezing energy of Mamoswine's blizzard, turning the swirling ice into a thick, shimmering loop that wrapped around the Sovereign's wrist, connecting him to the cold, raw energy of the room. The Sovereign shrieked in pain and shock. He was now a conductor for the very energy he sought to control. The muses focused their combined will. May's fire, Dawn's ice, Serena's psychic precision. All fueled by the remote, powerful, and terrified pulse of Ash's aura. For the Covenant, May screamed. For the Bond, Dawn yelled. For Ash, Serena cried. In a single, unified burst, the three women poured every ounce of their emotional and physical connection into their Pokémon. Blaziken's fire, Mamoswine's ice, and Delphox's psychic force slammed simultaneously into the crystalline staff. The staff couldn't handle the fusion of pure, untamed elemental and psychic energy. The Sovereign's control system failed. The crystal tip exploded in a blinding flash of light, releasing a chaotic sonic boom that tore through the command bridge. The Sovereign was thrown backward, collapsing against the remaining wall, his eyes vacant, the zealotry drained from his face. The power was gone. He was just a man. The battle was over. The shield was down. Cynthia's fleet, now visible through the broken window, swooped in, deploying rescue teams to stabilize the citadel and free the shackled legendary Pokémon, Zekrom and Reshiram. May, Climbing back up from the power core tunnel, stumbled onto the command bridge. She found Dawn and Serena huddled together, covered in soot and ice, tears freezing on their cheeks. They weren't celebrating. They were simply exhausted. "It's over," May whispered, looking at the defeated Sovereign. "We did it." Dawn checked the system. "The Citadel is in lockdown. We maintained structural integrity. Cynthia's forces are secure." Serena looked out the broken window at the vast, empty sky. "We need to go home." 3 days later, Ash Ketchum was well enough to be moved. The Citadel was secured, the Trust Network dismantled globally using the intelligence provided by the Muses. The remaining leaders of the Global Pokémon League convened a secret session to address the archaic Covenant and the crisis it had caused. Ash, still weak but walking, attended the session alongside the 3 women who had saved the world. The High Council delivered the verdict. The Covenant of the Grand Steward was an ancient, dangerous relic. It was officially and legally dissolved. Ash Ketchum was free of the title, the political ties, and the prize. He was, simply, Ash Ketchum. He found the 3 women waiting for him in the quiet solitude of the League's private gardens. They were dressed not in battle gear or gowns, but in their own familiar clothes. May in her bandana and jacket, Dawn in her beanie, Serena in her scarf. They were ready to walk away, to start their lives anew. Ash stopped before them. He felt the weight of the moment, the real moment, the one that mattered more than any battle. "They dissolved the Covenant," Ash said quietly. "You're free. You're Muses, commanders, champions. You can go back to your lives. You can travel, perform, train, or never look at a Pokeball again." He looked at May, the fire of Hoenn. "May, what do you choose?" May didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing with the honesty he loved. "I choose the fight, Ash. But I choose the right fight. And I choose the only partner who ever saw me as a weapon, not a decoration." She reached out and wrapped her arms around his waist, holding him tightly. Ash felt his heart swell. He looked at Dawn, the Platinum Muse, the strategist who had held the war in her hands. "Dawn, what about you?" Dawn smiled, a genuine, joyful expression devoid of fear or obligation. "I choose the logistics, Ash. Someone has to track the movements, secure the resources, and make sure you eat 3 meals a day. We need a commander, but the commander needs a brain. And I choose to be yours." She joined the embrace, resting her head on his shoulder. Ash's gaze met Serena's. The Kalo's muse, the one who had loved him longest, the one who had feared the truth of the prize. "I choose you, Ash," Serena said, her voice clear and absolute. "Not as the steward. Not as the prize. I choose you because you are the chaos I need, and the trust I earned. I choose the bond we forged in the Citadel, not the contract they signed in the stadium." She stepped forward, completing the circle, resting her hand against his chest, right over his recovering heart. Ash closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the love, the trust, and the profound, humbling certainty of the moment. He was no longer the lone hero. He was the center of a formidable, unbreakable partnership. "So," Ash said, a wide, genuine smile breaking across his face. "Where to next, commanders?" "First," May said, pulling back to look at him, "we go home. Then, we find the next league to conquer. Together." The 4 stood there, champions and partners, ready to face the new world, not as relics of an ancient pact, but as the architects of their own future. Chapter 10 End.